We are live. We are Brap, and we love gaming, and we have an amazing guest tonight. We have Jeff Grubb from VentureBeat joining us, and we're going to talk Halo Infinite delay, PlayStation 5, next generation consoles, and all things gaming related. So let's get the show started right now. We are live. Let me just tell you something. I am super excited for today's show. We have an amazing guest and always a great panel. We have Jeff Grubb from VentureBeat. Jeff, what is going on? Welcome to Brap, sir.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be on the show. I like the energy. I'm ready to talk about video games now. Let's do this.
And we were talking about video games before we went live.
Couldn't help ourselves.
Yes, we couldn't help ourselves. I think Eric was like, we might want to go live right now.
We had some good stuff going. So I was like, look, we need to share this with the people.
We do need to share this with the people. Absolutely. By the way, Slow-Mo Backslap is on vacation. So Slow-Mo, we hope you have a safe and happy vacation. And actually, I think we're going to have J-Dub, Lord Kratos, joining us to fill in for J-Dub. And then we'll have Gaming Forte joining us here shortly. But we also have B Money 101. B, what is going on?
Oh, not much, man. It's a great Wednesday night. Jeff Grubb's in the building, so I'm ready to get to it, man.
Absolutely. And as always, we have the voice of reason live from Ground Zero in South Florida. We have, have you seen, is Chris Redfield showed up yet? That's what I want to know.
Oh man, but we have a sheriff in, I think, Clearwater who has put a ban on masks.
Oh man.
Wow. Jesus Christ. Oh my God.
Keep my mouth shut.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, like the whole Chris Redfield thing's kind of a joke, Jeff. But it might not be at some point. I mean, like, I don't want to get political, but science. I mean, like science. I mean, I
wear your masks. It's helping.
Just get ready, man. I'm promising you right now. Mark your calendar. We will also mess up the election again. Just get ready.
Yeah, you know what? Don't say that because you guys did it in 2000. And look, we're not going to get
every
political,
election, bro. We've been to every election.
Oh my God! Yeah, I mean, anyhow,
get ready.
Look, if Florida ends up getting, Florida should become maybe its own country. I don't know. Anyhow, look. Anyway, so we're gonna have a great show for everyone. Want to give a big shout out to everyone in the live chat right now. Thank you so much for joining us. We always appreciate it. Guys, hit that like button. And by the way, we're also going to give away, as we always do, a little giveaway in the live chat. But I will say this. We're going to do a little trivia tonight because I think 2 weeks in a row, the same person's got the giveaway in the live chat. So we're going to try to mix it up a little bit for everyone in the live chat. So, so someone else wins. But anyhow, and as I mentioned, by the way, guys, I am going to be doing a Brap rant this Saturday with Lord Cognito from the Iron Lords podcast. Salute to Cognito. Had a great conversation with him today. We talked about some of the situations or things that are going on internally at Microsoft and the Halo Infinite delay, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But Jeff, real quick, I want to introduce you to everyone who's watching us right now. And just real quick, Jeff, just give us a quick snapshot of your gaming history, how long you've been gaming, and what your favorite gaming memories are all time.
Yeah, man, good questions. I'm Jeff Grubb. Like you said, I'm a games journalist, I guess is my job title. That's what I put on my tax returns, so I'll go with that. I write for GamesBeat.com, which is a vertical of VentureBeat.com, and I've been gaming since 1988. A little bit before that, but that's the year I got a Nintendo for my 5th birthday, and that's probably my favorite gaming memory is like just getting that, and my family, my one of my older brothers like wanted it too, so he kind of used my birthday as an excuse to be like, well, I'll pay for some of it, and but we'll get it for him, and the parents, you pay for the rest of it maybe, and they agreed to that, and they did this like this fun little game where I'd go around the house and find all these clues, and then I found the Nintendo in the bathtub under, I think it was like a broken hula hoop, and they said it was like, oh, it's the end of the rainbow, and you're finding this thing under the rainbow. So the 80s were a junky time, and I loved it. But
don't you miss the 80s though? I love the 80s. Great decade.
I feel like I don't have time to think to be too nostalgic about it because I'm so busy with the young kids I got right now.
Yeah.
But when I think about it, absolutely, for sure. But I just loved playing that system. Just as it learning video games through the NES was really important to me. Just Super Mario Brothers is still one of my favorite games, one of the first games I really played, and then just playing Zelda with my older brothers and learning games can also be this thing as well. That was really important to me for sure.
It's interesting. You mentioned Zelda. Zelda's coming up on their 35th anniversary, 2021, which just blows my mind. I mean, I can't believe it's been 35 years. And it's funny because I know we're talking about before we went live, our experiences with our kids. And I'll never forget playing Breath of the Wild and my oldest son watching it and just seeing his jaw drop. And he was like, wow. And and we have the NES Mini, and now they go back. My 6-year-old, he's playing the original Zelda, and he loves it too. And it's just like,
it's a great game still. It really is.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's that's the first top down open world RPG in gaming, really.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
Yeah. So, but we have but Jeff, thank you again. We're super excited to have you on. And we have some great topics to discuss. Jeff, so being that you're in game journalism, I always have to ask this question. I think the Brat panel knows what I'm about to ask. You probably see this thing on Twitter about game journalism. Is the gaming media biased? I'm sure you've seen this. Is there a media bias, particularly against Xbox? And by the way, I do ask this question of all. We've had Ryan McCaffrey on before, and I asked this question. Is there a bias out there? Because I see that a lot. I'm like, I don't think there's a bias or a conspiracy per se to.
No, it's not a conspiracy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think people have the things that they like. People have a certain aesthetic that they prefer. They have a certain style of game that they like. Maybe even more than that, they have a certain idea in their head of what a game should be. And I think, especially over the last 10 years or so, Sony has been doing a better job of playing to that certain audience. And I think that a lot of the people in gaming right now were the kind of people who were kids when the PlayStation and then the PlayStation 2 were dominant. So I think just by just through the sheer luck of demographics at a certain point, you're going to get more people who are into gaming because of PlayStation than because of Xbox. And that may change as the kids that were really young during the Xbox 360 grow up, but we're kind of getting there, and we'll see if that really ever happens. But it's not, I was talking about Nintendo a little bit ago. I was absolutely a Nintendo fanboy growing up, through the N64, and then the GameCube is when I started realizing okay, that's kind of idiot to be that way. I'm going to start broadening my horizons or whatever. Sure. But I was absolutely a fanboy, and there's still that part of me that just holds Nintendo in really high regard. But when I go to do my job, it's very easy to put that stuff aside. I will get excited about Zelda stuff, but turns out I get excited because the games are really good. It's very easy to be there's good reasons to be excited about this stuff. And when they do something disappointing, I'm actually harder on them because I do hold them in such high regard. And so it's something where once you go to cover something, it's very easy to be to reckon with your own internal biases and be okay, maybe I need to just compensate a little bit and actually go a little bit harder at the companies that I like the most. And it's not even, companies you like or whatever. They don't care about you, so it's very easy to realize that you shouldn't care about them. So it's you go do your job. You just want to you just want to do the best gaming journalism for the readers. That's all I'm really thinking about is I want to do what's best for the people reading my stuff. And a lot of times recently it has been, I'm going to explain to you why some of the stuff Xbox is doing makes sense, because no one else is doing that, and you're not thinking about it because you're thinking about games from a very certain perspective because you've been gaming for so long. And let's sort of unpack that and think about this stuff. And it's very easy for people to be like, oh, well, Jeff's an Xbox apologist or whatever. And I mean, I barely play my Xbox. I barely play my PlayStation 4. I'm on PC and Switch. That's really what I play most of the time. So it's really just, I see an opportunity to talk about something like Xbox, and people want to like throw accusations around. I'm like, I can only do so much to convince you, and I'm not really interested to win you over. If you're actually yelling at me about that sort of thing, you're probably not reading my stuff anyhow. Not really. So I'm not too worried about like trying to convince you that I am or am not something in particular.
Yeah, I mean that's a great point. I mean, it's interesting because I always see that like like IGN's always brought up as kind of the catalyst of feeding console wars, and there was like a recent, I think, tweet or something where people were upset where they talked about like the pricing, and they had like the Ghost of Tsushima thing, and people got upset about that. But to me, like personally, it's not, for me, it's not a big deal. At least I found some kind of humor in that. But again, I always ask that question because I think I like to enlighten individuals that, look, there's not this mass conspiracy against platforms or this bias per se.
Right. When it comes to something like IGN, it's like stoking flame wars or whatever is good for business, especially if you're on the social media team and gaming isn't necessarily your first and foremost love. You're just supposed to get engagement online. It's a very easy trap to fall into. So it's like, I wouldn't lay that at the feet of all of IGN. That's probably just some social media people going a little bit too hard or whatever, But for the most part, you're right. You could just laugh that stuff off and who cares? No one remembers it the next day anyhow.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
I always kind of see that. No, I always kind of see it as like, like it's the low hanging fruit type thing.
Yes.
But if you allow it to work, if you pay attention to it, they're going to continue to do it.
Yep.
It's like, I've seen like so many positive articles, that friends of mine write for their outlets, or I've seen, from some of the bigger sites they write. And it seems like those don't always get the same traction. You don't see like people throwing up the signal or the flare to, hey, go check out this thing, because there are positive things that are said. But the minute something negative is said, you're signaling everybody to go look at this. It's like, it's sort of like you smell sour milk. Hey, man, this milk is sour. Here, smell it. It's like, why would you want me to smell the sour milk? Don't point me to the negative thing. Point me to the positive thing.
Yeah, we know this works too, right? You do look at YouTube recommendations, and it's very easy. Like you click on one negative video, you're getting recommendations for all of them, and it's really easy to just fall in that pit and be like, man, yeah, let's rag on this game. I don't have money to spend right now, so it's way more entertaining just to hear why I shouldn't because it sucks so bad. It's it's very easy to fall into. You're right.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's it's funny you mentioned like Eric mentioned the good articles that people put out. Like it's funny, like Paul Tassi gets attacked sometimes, and then he puts out a great article, and it's like crickets. It's like no one no one comments on it. And I'm like, but this was a great article that he just put out, but nothing. It's total crickets. It's almost like if he says something that someone doesn't agree with personally, and the other thing I think that people don't realize is that journalism. There's a part of journalism that incorporates opinion pieces, and I think people forget that. It's not just I see people saying, oh well, a game journalists need to report the news. Okay, well,
no, we don't. It's like, you get news from Twitter faster than we can report it. We're shifting in how we cover things. Like, if you do look at like GamesBeat.com and you kind of go back and look over the years, like we were doing a lot more news stories. I personally was doing 3 or 5 news stories a day for a while, and recently it's been one story a day, maybe one story every 2 days, but much bigger, much more reporting, trying to find original stuff. It's like kind of how I made my name this summer, is getting more original stuff out there and taking the time to do that. But people say that's reporting the news, but then a lot of times the stuff I'm putting up is analysis. It is explaining things, because I have been doing this for so long, and I've been doing this particular job now for almost like 8-9 years. You at a certain point you do become an expert at understanding what's happening, or at least you feel like you are good at communicating what's happening, and people, and I look around and you see like people having ideas about like, oh, why is Xbox doing this, or why is PlayStation doing that, and you're like, well, isn't it obvious? And it's not. So I sit down and I get to write it, and those analysis pieces do very well. I think it does. It finds it's finding more of an audience, because people they already know the news. They don't necessarily understand it, and that's kind of, I think, where we're fitting in right now. And it's and a lot of times that can come across as opinion. So, but whatever. I honestly, I don't care if people get upset at my opinion.
Right.
No, that's a great point, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I feel like people don't understand that part. You just mentioned, you brought up a great example here. You said, I've been doing this 8 or 9 years. I'm kind of the subject matter expert, and and you are, in a sense, because you've been covering things and talking maybe to developers or industry insiders, or you're talking to these companies, Microsoft, Sony, whatever the case is, Nintendo. You have a certain perspective that we don't have, and I think people forget that. So that's really good to kind of share that, because I think that's important. Like, people forget that piece. Like, wait a minute, like, some of these guys, like in your case, you mentioned you've been gaming since the days of Nintendo. You have a certain historical perspective, but now you also have this insight to the industry that many of us don't have. And there's a lot of things that go misconstrued that people don't understand. And I see this on Twitter all the time. If you don't talk to people in the industry, or you don't have, those relations per se, it's easy to kind of jump to conclusions, maybe without understanding what's really going behind the scenes per se. Right. And that's where you guys kind of come in and kind of help connect the dots, if you will.
Right. And it's, I am privileged now to be in a position where if I do say something that is wrong on Twitter, usually someone reaches out to me and explains why it's wrong. And it's like, oh, okay, that makes so much sense. And I can now go and write a story. Like on our podcast last week, I was saying how on Twitter, I was saying, I think Sony might be mad at EA. And then I went and looked into that after I said that on Twitter. And it's like, no, it's actually more complicated than that. It turns out like, the reason like EA and Activision stuff isn't showing up in state of plays recently, especially that most recent one, is because those companies just don't need to be in state of plays, because they know how to speak to the audience that own PlayStation 4s and are going to buy PlayStation 5s. So why would they waste their time dealing with Sony when they can do it themselves? Now, Nintendo, they don't know how to speak to that audience. So they're going to go to Nintendo and say, hey, can we please be in your direct? Because we have Apex Legends coming out. Can we please be in that? It's that sort of thing. So it's like, okay, now I can go and I can write a story about that and explain what's happening here, so people can have a better idea of how this stuff actually works. Because I find it really fascinating, and it turns out so do a lot of other people.
Absolutely. I got you these super chats real quick. We have El Matador 809 with the $5 super chat. Thank you, El Matador. Says, okay, guys, let's start off the hot question for Jeff. Is Socom coming? What is the other launch game, PS5 game? What system will he pick up at launch?
Yeah. Okay. So Socom's a good question. I haven't heard anything about it, but like, if you think about it, it's in a weird position. Like, if you are a first-party console, manufacturer, and you are thinking about launching a big shooter, there's a lot more competition than there was like 7 years ago or whatever, when you were launching the PlayStation 4. So are you going to launch it in a world where Fortnite is still free? I know people do like the Socom campaigns, but most people, I'm assuming you're a Socom like multiplayer fan. If that's what you're there for, it's hard to see a world where like developers are going to put resources into making a game like that when they have to compete with free-to-play gigantic games like Warzone and Fortnite, especially if you're only on one system. And maybe, I know Sony talked about like, we might spread some of our multiplayer games to PC. That would be the only way this would make sense, is if Socom comes to PlayStation 5 and PC at the same time. But even then, that seems rough, because we're going to see if this even works for Halo multiplayer going free to play and stuff. That seems like the test case to see if anyone else can compete with these huge games from third-party publishers, especially if they're only on one console platform. So I don't know. It could happen. The logistics of it make me skeptical.
Yeah, and that's a great point, by the way, because if I think about Halo, we talked about OG Xbox before we went live. There wasn't anything like that at the time. There wasn't a Call of Duty.
Completely different world, yeah.
Yeah, completely different world. And now, like you say, you have these Fortnites, you have PUBG, and now Call of Duty, you have Warzone, which I'm a big Warzone fan.
The cross-play free-to-play. Like, how do you compete with that?
Exactly. Marty Bison with the $10 super chat. Thank you, Marty. He says, stopping by to say what up to my Warzone buddy. Thank you, Marty. We got to play Warzone soon. I will probably be on Warzone. Well, I think tomorrow. Well, I got to talk to the wife first. So, but I appreciate the super chat, guys. Real quick, regarding PlayStation. So, Horizon Zero Dawn just launched on the PC, and interestingly enough, so I picked up Death Stranding on PC, which by the way looks fantastic, runs great. The higher frames really do that game justice. And I was really anticipating the release of Horizon Zero Dawn on PC, and at least on Steam, the game's getting a lot of mixed reviews. People are talking about poor frames, even frame rate issues running on rigs that are pretty powerful rigs. Some of the complaints are the game's crashing. But all that aside, right? The issues that Horizon's having on the PC. This is I think this is Sony kind of testing the waters with their first party going to PC. And I really do believe that moving forward, especially next generation, I think we're going to see more of the Sony first party games eventually making their way to PC. It's probably not going to be a day and date situation like with Microsoft first parties, but I think Sony's definitely dipping their toes in the pool. So Jeff, I want to ask you this question. I mean, despite the issues that Horizon Zero Dawn's having on the PC, do you see Sony really kind of going down this path of releasing their games on PC? Horizon Zero Dawn released a couple years ago. Do you think, Jeff, that maybe we'll start seeing games released sooner on PC as we kind of get into next generation for Sony?
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely going to continue doing this, I think. So it turns out making these gigantic first-party, story-driven, single-player games that don't have microtransactions, they're really, really expensive. They're really hard to make. They take thousands of people. It's a big investment. And yeah, you could treat them as a little bit of loss leaders. And it's not like they're not profitable on when you just launch them on PlayStation 4 and then soon on PlayStation 5. They are. They're just not as profitable as I think people would assume, just because their budgets are so huge. And their marketing budgets are also huge. Like they do a lot of marketing with these things because it's about building up hype for the platform. That's the idea. Now, that's worked. That has worked. They've successfully built up hype for PlayStation. I think the enthusiasm for PlayStation as a brand is it's at a height almost. I think maybe it's never been as high as it is right now. Now, when you're when you're looking at the numbers though, and you're in the back room at Sony, and you're like, well, okay, it's great. Now let's talk about like really making some profits. What can we do? Well, we could put these games on PC. Is that going to hurt us? Not if we wait a couple years. Then let's just do that. I think it makes too much sense for them to pull back from this now. Going forward, they are going to keep doing this. There's too much money on the table. There's no reason to leave it there. The audience on PC and the audience buying PlayStations are they're not completely different, but they're different enough that it's not really cross-pollinating. You are reaching two different groups of people when you go to those two different platforms, and so there's kind of no downside for Sony, really. I think some people get upset, like I'm not sure if this is a Sony thing or if this is like coming from the fans, but people talk about like the PlayStation Advantage thing. Yeah. And I honestly don't know where that's coming from, but it's like, okay, like I think people get it in their heads where it's like, by only having these games on this system, it makes owning the system feel more special. And yeah, I bet it does make you feel a little bit more special, but you really shouldn't feel that way. They're just games, and more people being able to play the games is better. I mean, I guess people have repeated that over and over, and if it hasn't sunk in by now, I guess it's never going to sink in. But it's true. The more people that can play these games, the better. The more people that can pay for these games, it's better for Sony, and ensures you're going to get these games for longer and longer. Because I promise you, God of War is so expensive that it's like really hard to like for them to like say, okay, yeah, I mean, we're going to keep doing this stuff because it's working, but boy, is it a lot of money. It's a lot of money to do this stuff. And you don't want them thinking that way. You want them thinking like, it's a lot of money, but it's worth it to build up our platform, and we're going to get paid as we release it on another platform. And it's like, then it's just going to be money in the bank. And you want them to be excited about putting this stuff out because they're the kind of games that a lot of people like. So yeah, now as for them coming out sooner, now we talk about like what makes sense. It hasn't seemed to hurt. Like Horizon Zero Dawn sold really well. It was like on top of Steam charts even before it came out, like just in pre-orders. Yeah. So it seems to be working just the way they're doing it. Maybe they'll cut it down to like 2 years instead of 3 years, but I don't think they're going to go much closer than that. They have a strategy that I think that is going to work for them for the next couple of years. And if it starts like if it starts like making less sense, or if it does start hurting PlayStation, or whatever, they'll change it up. But for now, it seems to be working just fine. So I think this is what we can expect going forward.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's interesting because the whole argument about, like you mentioned, like maybe it makes people feel like their console special, whatever the case is. We had David Jaffe on a couple months ago, and he talked about the argument of it devalues the PlayStation, and Jaffe was like, hey, you know what? The people on PC, they were never buying a PlayStation anyway. So, they weren't. So this just opens up another source of revenue for Sony, which can go ahead and like you said, maybe encourage those developers to put that time and effort and the money, resources, whatever the case is, to build these big AAA experiences. And look, I'm all on board. Selfishly speaking, I will say this. I would be happy if Sony went day and date with PC, like what they did with Microsoft, like the way Microsoft did.
Yeah.
To me, like as a gamer, that would be my dream come true.
Yeah, that's how I would play them. I guess not Horizon Zero Dawn, because I guess it is not running great and crashing for people. But whatever, that happens sometimes, and you just wait for the patch. But yeah, I agree with you. I would prefer day and day, because I would play them on PC. Now again, we talk about what's good for Sony and what they think is best for their platform. They probably wouldn't love that idea so much, because I am someone who is going to get a PlayStation 5, and if I have to play if I can only play those games on the console for a few years, I would pick them up on console. And there's probably enough of people like me that and I think they do want their customers to feel special. So, and clearly that's why they're going out and spending money on like third-party, in-game exclusive content and stuff. They want people to feel that way. So that's how you achieve it. And you don't want to like abandon that too soon.
Absolutely. So, as we're talking about Sony, there was I think it's Imran Khan from Kind of Funny. I think it was on Reset Era, where he said that Sony is being very aggressive with trying to lock down third-party deals.
Yes, they are.
And to me, it kind of makes sense. Like, Microsoft's been big on the power of the Series X. Like, we know that third-party games are going to probably run best on the Series X, right? Or at least they should. And to me, like, how you counter that, if you're Sony, is maybe you take some of those games away from being on that platform. Have you heard anything to what Imran's talked about, Jeff, in terms of what Sony's doing on the back end? I mean, I've heard things, again, I don't know if it's true. I've heard rumors about some kind of partnership with Rockstar and the whole Grand Theft Auto being shown at the beginning of Sony's July event wasn't by accident, that there's something to that. Have you heard anything else about Sony really kind of, being super aggressive with locking down third-party content, exclusivity, things like that?
Yeah, I've heard those. I've heard some of the same stuff that Imran's heard. That Grand Theft Auto 6 one is like one that I haven't confirmed myself, but boy, that would be just huge. And I'll speak to like the strategy. Sony does seem to be going this way. You hear things about that. You hear things about Final Fantasy 16, which may or may not be true, but it seems like it's the cards are on the table there. Like they might be doing that. These are games where it's like they are the sort of thing that can swing console generations. I think maybe not as hard as they would have in the past, but still hard enough that it might be worth it to Sony. And you talk about like the power differential. I do think that is going to be an issue. I'm thinking more and more about it. The technology that Sony is using for the PS5 is AMD Smart Shift, and this Smart Shift, I think a lot of people are just assuming the PS5 is going to be right there with the Xbox Series X, and it may be. I don't know for sure. I'm not a developer.
Yeah,
but this Smart Shift tech is worrisome, I think, because what it does is it moves power between the CPU and the GPU, and developers haven't really had to worry about that, especially on console in the past. And this could, I think, at launch at least, prove troublesome to the point where you could start getting stories from like Digital Foundry or whatever saying, the PS5 version is actually kind of whack, and that'll get cleared up over time. It will. It's not going to be an ongoing issue. Developers will figure it out. Sony will figure it out and explain to developers, like, here's what you do. My understanding is they're not doing that yet, and that's the issue. So you go on into launch, and people are like disappointed with like Madden, NBA 2K, Call of Duty. that could leave a bad taste in people's mouth. But if you're countering that with, listen, we're going to figure that out, but also this is the only place that you can play Final Fantasy 16 and Grand Theft Auto 6, at least on console. Most people aren't going to care. They'll believe Sony when they say we're going to fix it, and they're still going to line right up for those very exciting announcements. Because I think people, especially go through the first 6 months, first year, people are buying these consoles on the promise of the future. There's only going to be so much at launch, so much through the launch window. Getting a console at launch is always about, I believe what this console is going to do in the future. And Sony's saying, like, we are going to be investing hard in getting a lot of games that only you could play if you have a PS5. That's going to convince a lot of people, I think. And I think as for the strategy is going to work, but how I feel about it, I do dislike it somewhat. Like, I'm not upset about it, whatever. I think this is business, and Sony's going to try to win whatever way they can. It's not illegal, so they're going to do it. But to me, my thing is always like when I look at the Epic Game Store, I never really had a problem with the Epic Game Store existing. I do think like the idea of like just going out and finding existing games and giving them money to keep them off another platform is kind of shitty. And I think that what you should be doing is using that same money to create games that wouldn't have existed if you didn't have that money. I think that is way more interesting. It shows way more faith in like the idea of creating games and not just like locking other platforms out, because that's really what this is at the end of the day. It's not like, oh, we're getting this game's exclusive to the PlayStation 5 because it's still on PC. They're still going to come to PC. What it is keeping it off of Xbox. And that's, I think that when you think about it that way, it is a little bit kind of like, I don't love this. But again, not really mad about it. It just, I wish they would take this money and use it to create games that wouldn't exist otherwise, because that to me is a way better strategy. And that, to be fair, is what Epic is doing now going forward. They've kind of laid off the exclusive deals, and now they're like funding publishing for developers like Remedy. Like, we're going to publish your next game and give you all of the money back or whatever. That's way more exciting to me, and I wish Sony would do that as well.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it sounds like, to speak on what Jeff was saying, it's sort of like that thing, like, this is how we're going to kind of roll to kind of keep the spotlight on us as we, figure out the next moves, what we're going to do as far as development and bringing in new IP and doing this and that. So yeah, it's because I think here, like in our bubble, we just look at things differently. Like we're so tuned in that when we see these kind of moves, we're like, oh, that's pretty messed up, or
right,
or however you land on it, right? But the general casual consumer, or the general consumer, they're going to go, oh, I want to play that. And I had this before. And it's sort of like you got a little bit of brand recognition, a little bit of goodwill. Hey, they didn't let me down before. I'm going to keep rocking with it.
It makes so much sense, right?
Yeah. So it's just, like you said, it's business. It's not illegal.
Yeah.
You have to define what's anti-consumer.
If I was Sony, I would probably do the same thing, right? Like, yeah, like it's, if you have all this money and like, and you have a lot of money specifically because PlayStation did well, and you are restarting from scratch from, like, you're going from 112 million PlayStation 4s sold worldwide to 0 PlayStation 5 sold worldwide, and you got to start from scratch again. Mm-hmm. You would, of course, do everything in your power to fight to ensure that you continue to have this really, really profitable division continue its momentum. I mean, it makes too much sense to ignore. I think that, and I don't think it's gonna, like, when I talk about, oh, I wish they would use the money to create games that wouldn't exist otherwise. This is like me being kind of like ideological, and it's like, oh, in an ideal world, this is how it would work. But I'm not. I don't have the energy in me to be mad at Sony about this particular thing. I'm like, listen, I would do the same thing if I were you. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think it's also because they're not really known for making like smaller titles. You know what I mean?
Right.
Some of their bigger studios have just come off of releasing, you know what I mean, some big titles at the end of this generation. So they kind of got to like retool. So for them, it's probably just easier to go out, spend a little money, get some third-party stuff in there. You know what I mean? Kind of show it as an exclusive, for their platform until their first-party studios are ready to rev back up again.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And that, and it makes sense because third-party developers are going to be ready to go pretty soon. And even if Sony's first-party studios were ready to go, Sony's going to hold them off because we talk about how expensive these games are to make. You can't you can't release God of War 2 when there's only 5 million PlayStation 5s in the world at launch. You have to wait. Even if God of War 2 was finished right now, today, they would be holding off on it until later so that they could release it into a world where there are like 20 million PlayStation 5s so they can ensure a certain return on that investment. So bringing in third parties to kind of fill that gap makes a ton of sense because they can release it. They're going to get paid by being exclusive by Sony. And then Sony could be like, okay, this is kind of like biding our time. And then by the time that there are like more systems in the world, those games can go to other platforms then, because it's always going to be a timed exclusive thing for the most part. The Street Fighter V was like the one example, right, where it wasn't a timed exclusive. So maybe they'll do stuff like that. Maybe they'll get really wild, but I don't think so.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. The strategy almost reminds me of how aggressive they were with the PlayStation 2. If you remember, a lot of the PlayStation, to me, the success of the PlayStation 2 really kind of hinged on Grand Theft Auto 3 when that game came out, and that was exclusive. So when I see this Rockstar, kind of partnership, it just, to me at least at the surface level, just screams we're going to do what we did with the PlayStation 2 and try to really be aggressive with locking down, third-party games exclusive to our platform. And then in the meantime, like you said, Jeff, as that install base grows, then we're going to gradually release our first-party games out, to kind of make ends meet, if you will, because, it does make sense to, I don't know how much, I forget how much the budget was for God of War, but it was probably godly expensive. Releasing that game when you have 5 million consoles out probably doesn't make sense as if you have 25 to 50 million consoles out where you can really make that impact.
Completely different math at that point. Yeah.
Because
it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And I forget, I think Phil Spencer said something about AAA games. I think the break-even point's like 5 million copies sold, where you remember this, Jeff, back in the days, if you sold 1 million, that was a big deal.
Yeah. And we're living in a world now where if you turn over there and you look at Nintendo selling games for $60 now, they're going to have 5 games over 20 million probably by the end of this year, right? That's five first-party games over 20 million.
Jeff, how does Nintendo do this? I mean, this is...
But this is the thing. Like, they just always go for everyone else. And everyone's always going for the same people. And that's like... okay, so people are like, Microsoft's not even trying anymore. They're not trying necessarily to win over you. And I know that sucks. I know it does. I don't like it either. I look at it and be like, what are you doing? And then you think about it for a little bit, and it's like they are trying to be like a Microsoft version of Nintendo, and it probably is not going to work. That's why it's easy to be skeptical of it. But they're trying it because there are so many people in the world that kind of want to play games, and they're doing it on their phone, and they're pretty happy with it, but not necessarily. And then you put a Switch out, and you're like, this kind of works pretty similar to how your phone does, but it's so much better for playing games. And we know that you kind of struggle with games that have like a lot of fail states and punish you. Here's friggin' Animal Crossing, which is just express yourself. And there's so many people are like, oh, I didn't know video games could be this. And they lap it up, and it's the biggest thing of the year. By going for everyone else, they're selling 20 million copies of these games. And I think that's one of these things where it's like you go and then you look back at Sony, and Sony's very, very profitable, very successful. They got Final Fantasy VII Remake locked down on exclusive, right? But then that game only sells 5 million copies. Now, that's really good for that game, actually. It's really successful. It's doing really well. But still, 5 million compared to 20 million for Animal Crossing, which is not just like exclusive to console. Like Final Fantasy VII is also is it on? No, it's not on PC yet. So yeah,
not on PC yet. No.
But okay, so it's an apples to apples comparison. Then it's like there's more PlayStation 5s in the world. Like what is going on here? And I think Microsoft is seeing it as like we have to break out of this competition with Sony for the same people. And if that means if that means we're not exactly going to make the same exact kind of games that Sony makes, so be it. I think they realize that they also need hardcore games, and they're trying to make them, but it's taking some time. And we'll see how they turn out when they actually do come out, if they really put the investment into it that they need to. But they do believe that there are more people out there that they could reach with something like Game Pass. And I think there's something to it. I think they have a good idea there. We'll see if they can pull it off. They just might not be the right company. It might take a different kind of company to actually pull this off. I think services side, they have done this sort of thing before with like Windows.
Yeah,
I think the gaming audience is so fickle and demanding that it could be really hard to pull it off. So we'll see.
Yeah, you know, the thing with Nintendo though, I just feel like maybe Nintendo from its maybe this was an easier move for Nintendo to appeal to maybe a broader base because they're the way their games are like just like, you know, like Mario has more, I think, more mass appeal, right? It's more light spirited or lighthearted, I guess. Even with Animal Crossing, Animal Crossing had this following before Animal Crossing hit the Nintendo Switch, but you know, you speak of Nintendo, it's like they're doing things that are just, I mean, you can't Gaming Forte, if anyone's seen Forte, by the way, please send him a message because he's missing. So Gaming Forte is also on the panel. He's a manager at GameStop, and he says to us, he's like, we can't keep Switches in stock right now. He's like, they come in and they're gone.
Yep.
You know, and it's just amazing that Nintendo and I see the Nintendo Switches everywhere now. It's you know, I mentioned this before we went live. My 11-year-old has one. His friends all have Nintendo Switches, and it's just this behemoth right now. And I haven't been able to figure out what's a secret sauce to Nintendo's success, because they're not putting out what we call the bangers, if you will, right? The God of War, visually speaking,
right?
But their games are solid. I mean, they have some really. I'll say this: Nintendo, from a gameplay mechanic standpoint, is ahead of at least everyone else. I think.
Well, that's the thing. Like, more than any other company, they believe in making games, and like, what do I mean when I say that? Like, they believe in games being games. They think that their success is directly tied to just making those games. Now, if you look at someone like Microsoft, over the last 10 years, I think they really fell out of love with the idea that their success was going to be through making games. Their success was going to come through building this platform where people can play their multiplayer games from other developers, and we're going to build this like really great Xbox Live experience. And you're also going to have exclusive NFL content on the Xbox One and TV. But then we're going to be here for your games. But other people are going to make those games, and we're just going to take 30% of anything that you spend inside those games. And you cannot be in this business and think that way. You have to believe in the idea of making games as the key to your success. This is why people don't like EA. People don't like EA because they look at them and they can tell you don't actually believe that games are really how you're going to make money. You're going to sort of tweak the way your games that already exist work so you can get the most money out of this same audience. And it's like, man, okay, I get it. Again, if I were a business person and I had this core group of people that want to spend a lot of money on my stuff, like, I kind of feel like I would do that. But I would also look around and be like, I still think that if we really make something new and exciting and fresh, that we could capitalize on that. And Nintendo has always believed that it's their culture. It's never changed, even when they've been down in the dumps, and it's why they always bounce back. And to me, this is like one of the big problems plaguing the industry right now. Is you look around at these publishers, and they are like afraid to make games. Activision's the same thing. They for years afraid to make games. They're just going to make Call of Duty. Then it was Guitar Hero for years, and then they stopped making that, and then Tony Hawk or whatever, and they stopped doing that. And now they don't know what to do. Now they're just like milking Blizzard for all it's worth. And when that gets done, when they've like bled that stone, they're going to be screwed because they just don't believe in making games. So that's the key to Nintendo's success compared to everyone else. Absolutely.
You know what's fascinating about what you just said? I mean, we've talked about this on Brap and the Brap DM on Twitter. And I in this last Brap ramp that I had last weekend, you know, it almost seems like we talk about Microsoft. We'll get to Microsoft in a little bit, but you brought a very interesting point about Microsoft. You know, you kind of have to win over the core gamers. I've always believed this. The core gamers are the base. Like, and I always talk about politics. You got to rally the base, right? You know, and the hardcore game, we're the base. You got to rally us. Got to get us excited. And it's almost like when Nintendo needs Nintendo to be successful in gaming because that's their bread and butter at the end of the day, right? Sony needs PlayStation to be successful because that's about a third of their revenue.
Yeah, it's
Microsoft
bread and butter. Agreed.
Yeah, Xbox, maybe not so much. You know, you think about it. Microsoft is what's their evaluation now? The trillion-dollar company, right? A lot of their stuff is more tech related outside of Xbox and gaming. If Xbox left Microsoft, Microsoft would be okay. If PlayStation failed, Sony would it'd be a punch in the gut.
Yeah.
If Nintendo failed, there'd be no Nintendo. So I think that mindset, I think, at least in my mind, when you have that focus on making games, because look, your livelihood depends on it. I think perhaps maybe that's why we see certain levels of disparity, I guess, in terms of quality content and the focus on games versus maybe services per se. But we'll get to Microsoft in a little bit. But real quick, I do want to get to the live chat here. And by the way, thank you for the 248 viewers that are watching us right now. Hit that like button, and if you haven't, subscribe if you're new, and please retweet the link out. Let your friends, family, cousins, your grandmother, your grandpa, let them know we're live. So
I'm back. Can I say one thing on what we were just talking about? And you kind of see like the philosophy behind the traditions of these companies. Like you have like a Nintendo who came from a history of toy making, right? Entertaining and making toys and things to entertain. And sort of like you see that culture in their, like Jeff said, they make games and they have their IP, and their IP is there to service whatever new idea and concept that they have for a game.
Right.
And that's
it doesn't matter that it's a sequel, because they're going to have new ideas. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And then you get Sony that comes from an entertainment world and understanding how to put on the big show and again how to intend that kind of filters in. And it's like at times you kind of look at Microsoft and you see like the lineage and the history of service. They kind of it feels like it's kind of bled over more so now into the Xbox side than it has, because I remember Phil doing the interview with Ryan, and I think James Blackley was on panel and Peter was on panel, and they were talking, and I think it was kind of said like there was a time where Xbox, like as far as the company of Microsoft went, they were off in their own building doing their own thing. They were kind of like the joke in a way, like those guys are over there doing this, but then they became like the cool kids, like they were kind of doing their own thing, making games and doing whatever. And it's sort of like as it grew, it started to get more of that attention in a way. But now it kind of seems like I always kind of envision like Satya and Phil having a conversation about we have the box, that's cute, but how does this fit into what we do as a full company? Maybe I'm wrong with that, but that's sort of that's kind of how I see it,
I think this was the issue actually that they're trying to solve. Now, I mean, you're right. These companies have their culture, and Microsoft wants Xbox to fit in the culture, and I think that is I think that's why the Xbox is continuing and why they actually do seem to be investing in it so much, because I think they've looked ahead and they figured out, look, we can actually make this thing work and fit with the idea of what we want. And really, they're not wrong with what they're doing. I mean, I guess, people want to rag on Game Pass, but guys, I think in 10 years at the most, the idea of buying a game is going to be as crazy to you as buying an album of music. Like, you don't buy CDs anymore. Don't joke with me. You don't buy CDs. Maybe someone does, but most people.
We're back on vinyl now.
I just started buying vinyl again. I started buying vinyl again.
But you get your vinyl as a collector's item, and you're going to get. That's absolutely going to happen with games. You're absolutely going to get the thing that's like, a collector's version that might have some physical thing, but really it's going to be a thing that you hang on your wall or whatever, or frame. But the idea of buying games is going to be pretty out there very soon. It's going to go to subscription, and this is like, people like, when you look at Epic Games trying to fight Steam head to head by doing the exact same thing Steam does, that's going to fail, right? You knew Mixer was going to fail when it tried to do the exact same thing that Twitch was doing, right? And so you have to do something different. You have to, it's like disruption is the thing people call it. You have to disrupt the way things work. And subscriptions are absolutely the disruption waiting to happen in gaming. And Microsoft has the money, they have the resources, they have the studios, and they have the leadership to make that happen. They might not have these specific games that longtime gamers really want. And that could be a fatal flaw. It absolutely could be. It's just this business model, it's going to work eventually. If Microsoft doesn't do it, someone else will. So Microsoft says, well, we could do it, and it's exactly the kind of thing that we like, a service. And it's the thing that we can, it's also the kind of thing where it's like, as it grows, the money that comes into this, we use to build out our servers, and those servers get used for Azure and all of our other businesses. So we can kind of use gamers to sort of fund the expansion of our server thing. it all just fits together, right? So why wouldn't we just go for it? So they believe in it, which is why Microsoft has so much money that they're spending on acquiring studios, and I think they're going to be spending more money pretty soon to acquire more. So it's like they believe in it. So yeah, it's easy to go like, oh, this is the problem for them, but it could in the long run, it could actually be like, oh, this was their solution the entire time, and they were right that this is right for them. I do think that they need to back it up with games that I personally am excited about. I like stuff like Sea of Thieves somewhat. I like Grounded a little bit. But you know, I was never a Halo fan. I'm never a Gears of War fan. I honestly don't like many of the big games from Sony or Microsoft. But a lot of people like God of War, and a lot of people like you know, all the other Sony first party games. And Microsoft doesn't have anything like that. And I think that if they really are like, you subscribe to Netflix because it really does have good shows, right? And it sometimes has really good movies. Yeah, and like it's new original stuff. Like Stranger Things, I know a lot of people rag on it as not being a really high quality show. It's a massive hit. It's huge, and it's like that's the kind of thing that Microsoft does need, I think, to actually make this Netflix of gaming work. I don't right now. I'm skeptical in having faith in them actually being able to pull off that side of it. We'll see.
Let me. I have one more question for you, Joe. We'll get the super chats real quick. JD Gamer with the $5 super chat says, "We've been here before. Microsoft versus Apple in the '80s. Microsoft with broad appeal, and Apple went for selling the box. Problem is, someone always builds a better box." And then I have another super chat from Glorious War with the $5 super chat says, "Jeff, what is the critical mass number for Xbox Game Pass to be a success? Will Sony ever follow suit?" Actually, that was my question to you, Jeff. Follow-up question. Will subservices make all AAA games turn into games as a service? I think it's a great question.
Yeah, so make sure I remember to answer all these questions. What was the first one again? I already forgot. Okay. So what's the critical mass number? Okay, so so they're at 10 million. You know, a lot of those are subsidized through their big promotional stuff where you pay $1, but people did pay for Xbox Live Gold to get on that. So like they did get quite a bit of money through that stuff, but still, that's not I guess not a real 10 million, but it's close enough that it's worth counting as that. And a lot of those people are going to probably continue subscribing, not a majority, but most, or not a majority, but like close to it. I think that the magic number for them, I think the goal that they would want to hit is probably 20 million subscribers by like 2022, 2023. I don't know for sure. I'm trying to actually ask Phil Spencer this exact thing right now. So we'll see if I can get an answer to that. And if I do, I'll post a story on it. But that would be my guess, is like they are really probably setting their sights on like, let's see how fast we can get to 20 million. If it's like super quick, then everyone should just step back and be like, this is working. This is the future. If it takes like years and years, or they stagnate for a really long time, then gaming's just different. And people that play games are actually just different, and they're going to continue buying stuff for God knows why, but they're just a different animal or whatever. But now, will Sony ever follow suit? Like, they will have to eventually, if this is the way the market goes. I don't necessarily think it's going to have to happen, and they could hold out for a really long time. The passion for PlayStation is so high that I think that they could hold off for years without actually having to put God of War 3 or whatever on PlayStation Now day and date. But if Microsoft does kind of really make this work, and it does turn into a huge success, and investors are like, hey, why aren't you worried about this subscription side? That's the stuff we actually care about, because that's what investors actually care about, is that engagement stuff. I don't know why. You'd have to ask them. Yeah, money. I think they think it's more guaranteed money for a long time. Like, exactly. Yeah, it's the same reason people like want you to borrow money from them, because you're paying them money for a really long time, and they like that. Now, will subservices make all AAA games turn into games as a service? I think it's the exact opposite. I think without subscription services, every game would be a games as a service, because you can't make that kind of investment in a huge game without ensuring that you're going to get exactly what we're talking about, long-term money over a long time. The lifetime value of your player has to be so much higher as games get more and more expensive to make. Now, if you have a subscription service to fund a lot of these games, like, honestly, like, I mean, okay, this is going to be a bad example because people think this game looks like shit, but like the pitch right now from Microsoft in my email is, oh, the Battletoads only exist because of Xbox Game Pass. Now, you know, that's Battletoads, but there are going to be bigger and bigger games that only exist because Game Pass because we can put it out there, we can fire and forget it, and as long as it's part of this library, it's going to be continuing to be a reason that people subscribe, even if they don't ever play it again. In the back of your head, you're like, I want to make sure I have access to that, so you just keep subscribing over time. And that's not how it works with a retail game you sell for $60. You put that out, you sell it for $60, it drops in price over time pretty quickly these days, and then suddenly it's not worth very much, and it's not making any money, and it's not bringing in subscribers, and you're like, okay, well, then you put it on PlayStation Now. So I think at a certain point, like, you want to like push up, like, when does it go to PlayStation Now or when does it go to Xbox Game Pass, so that you can keep making a variety of games and not make everything games as a service, because it turns out people want those like traditional games because it's what they grew up with, and some people like really just want to go from game to game to game, and while they are not worth as those customers aren't worth as much money to you, they are still worth a lot in terms of like getting excited about the platform. They're often the kind of people that are championing the platform and saying, you have to get this, you have to get a PlayStation 4 for all these games. You have to, like, you can't miss out on these exclusives. So to me, like, the idea of games as a service be like taking over because of subscriptions, it's going to be the exact opposite for sure.
Well, that's great insight, by the way, because I've heard that argument a lot where, you know, like, especially with Microsoft, everyone thinks that, you know, because Forza and Halo now, it's going to be games as a service. They think that it's going to make everything games as a service. And I've never heard that other side of the argument that no, actually it won't, because it's going to help, you know, fund other games per se, or get other games into, or maybe release that maybe wouldn't have been released without, you know, having.
Yeah, this. I mean, well, why did people think that things were going to games as a service before now? Like, we didn't have subscriptions, and Ubisoft's like, all of our games are going to be games as a service.
Exactly.
Like, what was happening there, guys? It's like, no, games are just expensive, and they want to get as much of a return on investment as possible, because otherwise, this whole thing isn't worth it. It's just not. It's too expensive. So.
Yeah. You know, gaming's changed a lot since, you know, we grew up gaming. Once it became like $1 billion industry and money was involved, that really changed the game. And I think we've seen that, Jeff, you know, over the last 30 years or so with gaming. It really did change the landscape. Like we mentioned Activision, you know, they answer to shareholders. You got to make their shareholders happy. Sony does, Microsoft does. They have to make those shareholders happy, or else it's not good for them if they don't. It's very much a revenue driven business. It's, you know, generating revenues that I think Hollywood would envy. Which, you know, 30 years ago nobody would have thought that, right?
I mean, but what do they really envy though? Like a movie, you put out a movie, and how do you get more money out of your most diehard fans? There's not a lot of options. Like, you put out a poster, you put out some merch, maybe they'll buy that stuff. Games there's software. You put that out there, and you build it in a way that, like, you sell stuff to people on and on. That's what the movie industry really, really actually is envious of, is that games are custom made to get the most money from the people that want to spend the most money on these games that they love. And that is, and if you're making games and you're looking at these people saying, we would absolutely spend more money on your game if you would let us, you're going to do it. Like, people, you're right. They just can't help themselves. They have to. Actually, they legally have to, because they have to do what's best for their investors. They can't not make the most money possible. So it's unavoidable. The opportunity cost, like you say, I think I said a little bit ago, it's too expensive, and people are like, no, games are more profitable than ever before, and it's like that's not how it works. When you go shopping, if you could get, if you want to like go to the grocery store or whatever, and you see two things on the shelf that are the exact same price or the exact same product, and one's cheaper, you're going to go for the cheaper one, because a penny saved is a penny earned, and you're going to do what's best for your own bottom line. These companies are the exact same as you. They're going to do what's best for their bottom line, and that just means games as a service in a lot of situations. And I see in the chat, people are like, oh, that, you know, the Game Pass is not going to lead to a world where we get fewer games as a service. And you're crazy if you think that. It's absolutely going to enable smaller and mid-sized and maybe even big games that are just contained experiences to exist in a way that they wouldn't be able to in a different world.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. I think the biggest beneficiaries, I think, from Game Pass or a service like Game Pass are going to be the smaller developers, or maybe like AA games, you know, because we all remember, last generation, there was a lot of AA games, and a lot of those companies went out of business, right? And I think that's why indies really kind of filled that vacuum or that gap that AA's that we're missing those AA games. But I think like something like again, like Game Pass or PlayStation Now is going to really be a big boon for those companies. There was a small developer that said that, hey, my game wouldn't be possible unless it was a Game Pass. I forget who the developer was, but and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because that gives us the opportunity to experience games that we may have not been able to experience. And some of those games will be good games, and as gamers, why would you argue against good games, right? But with regards to Sony, though, I do think that I do think Sony's kind of pivoting that way too. I know that's kind of a point of contention with the PlayStation community. We're like, oh, we're not going the way of Game Pass, but PlayStation Now has been around for a little while, and Sony seems to be
trying to match it a little bit.
They have. They got Control in there. That they've got a couple other big third party games. They have the deal with Microsoft now to tap into Azure. So the one thing that I'll say about Sony and Eric, you and I have always talked about this, that Microsoft's always good at doing what to say, Eric. They know where the puck's going.
No, it was it's been said that Wayne Gretzky's father always told him, be where the puck's going to be, not where the puck lies, go where it's going.
Yep.
Yeah, and Microsoft is kind of always been like that. I talk about my days before we went live on the being an Xbox Live beta tester. That was kind of ahead of its time, and I never forget when they put the broadband port, Ethernet port. They got lambasted for that. Why would you do that? Most people on 56K. Well, it wasn't about those individuals on 56K. It was about moving things forward. And Sony was kind of like downplaying the whole idea at the time. If you guys remember on the PlayStation 2, they had the adapter that went to the back of the PlayStation 2, and it had the option of 56K or broadband. But they eventually followed suit and introduced PlayStation. PlayStation 3 was broadband enabled. It was more of a robust online system. They improved upon that with the PlayStation 4. But I think Sony is, even though they're sticking kind of to their guns, if you will, to the traditional model, I do think in some sense they are slowly pivoting to that services, because they have to know, like you said, Jeff, and maybe 10 years this is the future, right? They have to know. I imagine there's smart people running that company.
Yeah,
they see this.
And I think what they've done now with PlayStation Now is put it in a position to where if they need to change, or if they need to shift quickly from one business model to another, they're ready to go. I don't necessarily think that they think they are going to have to do that anytime soon, and I agree with that. But if they need to, they're ready. They can match Microsoft, feature for feature whenever they want. But we do know that they care deeply about services and the amount of money that services generate. They put they move some executives around to make sure that one of their young and up and coming executives is in charge of network services. And if you look where most of their money came from over the last couple of years for both Microsoft and PlayStation, and really even Nintendo a little bit, it was microtransaction sales from Fortnite. That game was so huge that it was a huge bump in the revenue that all three companies were making just from that 30% cut. So you work backward from what can we do to ensure that when people go to play a game online, especially now in a world with crossplay where we can't just force them onto our system, what can we do to ensure people want to play on our system so that when they do go from these contained experiences on Game Pass that we're talking about to then go play Fortnite with their friends, what can we do? Well, we can ensure that they have an affordable subscription option that is really, really appealing, that maybe it's breaking even for us, or maybe right now it's losing money, but eventually it could make money, but whatever. That's not necessarily the idea. The idea is the network effect, where if you have a group of friends that all are playing together, they're getting together on Discord every night and they're talking about what are we going to go play, and everyone's well, we're going to go play this Game Pass game, and you see them say that, you're well, man, I just got to get Game Pass so I can keep playing with my friends. And then that builds from when they then go to buy a game that is not on Game Pass, you're so connected because you've been playing together every night because you have all these games on Game Pass, that you are much more likely, and this is what they've said, that they see game sales spike because of Game Pass.
Yeah,
that you're much more likely to then go and buy that game as well, because you have a good time playing with your friends. You've experienced it, and more people than ever experience it, specifically because of Game Pass. And so Sony knows this. Sony knows about this network effect. They are trying to facilitate it, but they've sort of done it from the other way. They're doing it from the top down with like, you're going to buy the PlayStation 5 for God of War, and you're going to buy for all these other games. And then when you want to go play Fortnite with your friends, you already got the PlayStation because you got it for God of War. But they know that like Microsoft's trying to do it from the bottom up, and they might be like, well, we could kind of sweep the legs out from under them if maybe we try to like fight them on that battle. I don't think that Sony necessarily believes it's going to have to do that. I think they think that this strategy that they have of like getting big time exclusives and getting exclusive content, that's going to work just fine. And I think they're probably right about that.
Yeah, I think right now where we stand in this time of gaming, I think for the time being they're probably right. But I could see a situation, and I'll relate it back to Xbox Live in its infancy, where the 360 dropped, and it was like boom, like the 360, like Live was a big reason why I think people dropped it. Besides the great content too, I mean, like the 360 had really solid content, compelling content that made you want to get on Xbox Live. We think about Gears of War, right? Gears of War was just like, oh my God, like when that game dropped, it had that compelling narrative-driven piece to it, single-player campaign, but it also had that multiplayer component, which, I remember we were all about Halo, and then Gears dropped. We're like, what's Halo? I mean, it was that impactful.
Yeah, but then like it was Call of Duty was in the end way more important though. It was because it was like it was so huge, and that game was on everything. But because Microsoft had already built up this network effect where you get on Xbox 360 every day, and you saw what all your friends were playing, and everyone was playing the same thing for like those first couple of years, where it's like, oh, I got 20 friends, and everyone's playing Oblivion or whatever it was, and you feel like I want to be online playing on this platform. That is, I have a good experience. I have a good time playing with these other people, and Microsoft made that really easy. Over time, everyone made that easy and matched them on that. But that doesn't mean that network effect idea doesn't work anymore. It absolutely does. You need to find a new way of doing that, and that's what Game Pass is.
Yeah, absolutely. Forte, what's going on, man? Welcome to Brad Forte. Glad you could make it, man. What's going on?
Oh man, just got home from my inventory. This first time in like a year I had to do an inventory at my store, and I was like, oh God. It actually went pretty smoothly though, because we ain't got no products. So
oh boy.
Everything's sold out.
Yeah, everything's sold out. So Jeff Forte is our resident retail expert. He's a manager at GameStop, and I think he knows the price of next gen consoles.
Oh, Lord,
but he won't let us. You did. Jeff,
I said I saw something. I didn't say what it was.
So Forte saw a $399 price tag for a next gen console, but I did. He's saying he doesn't know what it is. So
I don't. Hey man, it's a lot of things. It's a lot of things that's in there under under system SKUs that we don't know. It could have been that Switch Pro that we all been thinking was coming for the last 2 years. You never know.
It could be that Atari VCS thing or whatever. Not Atari, whatever.
Been.
That VCS thing though. It was like that was like $400, right?
It was like $400. Yeah.
All I know is it was in there for one day and it was gone the next. So it was there.
That sounds like thickens. Yeah, the plot thickens. I want to go to Super Chat real quick. JD Gamer with the $5 Super Chat says, with any format first, 1 to 10 million wins. Game Pass is already there, and if Sony doesn't answer this before Microsoft gets its bangers out, there will be a problem. All right. What do you think about that, Jeff?
I mean, I don't know. I think it could be a problem. I think that it'll be a problem with the same audience that we're talking about, and if I mean, really. You're right about like stirring up the base. If Microsoft's base gets sort of defeatist and gets does lose the faith a little bit, that could kind of sink them before they have a chance to win over that wider audience.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I am, as we talked about pre-show. We'll talk about that here in a sec. Speaking of Xbox Live buddies that I met on the Xbox Live, original Xbox, one bad mother who I've known for like 19 years. We go back on the original Xbox and Xbox Live. Says with the $5 Super Chat, says great discussion, great guests, enjoying these nuanced and balanced perspectives. Thank you, One Bad Mother. Always appreciate you coming through, man. And I do want to pivot to Microsoft here. And by the way, Forte, you
in time.
Yes, you're in time. You and Slomo had a great conversation last night on your show. Big shout out to Slomo. Slomo, hope you're listening. Have a great vacation. But you guys had a great conversation last night As we all know, no secret that Halo Infinite has been delayed. It's being pushed back to 2021, which I think obviously was the right move to make. We talked about this on BRAP. We thought after the July showing of Halo Infinite that this game should be delayed. I mean, it was not. Look, to me, this was the worst showing of any Halo game that I've seen in my 19 years on the Xbox platform. Look, there were some positives to take away from that. The gameplay mechanics, look, I thought pretty good. But visually speaking, the game did not look where I thought it would be. And when you think about Microsoft trying to sell the Xbox Series X, and their messaging early on the year was when you heard Series X, you also heard Halo. Like the two were synonymous with one another. And my expectation was this game's going to look freaking awesome. It's going to be like, it's going to tap into the Series X and, show us the power, the 12 teraflops that we've been hearing a lot about for Microsoft, right? Woo. And we had some insight from our good friend Optimus Code, who said that Microsoft had designed two separate versions of Halo, one for the Xbox One and one for the Series X, and then we saw July, and we know what happened there. And so I really hope that this game. Look, I want to see this game turn out well because I've always enjoyed Halo for the most part, but I got to be real. Since 343's taken over, they haven't, at least in my opinion, have been on the same level as when Bungie was doing it. But a couple things. Look, games get delayed all the time. This isn't anything new to the industry. And I'm glad they did this. But I do think, though, that this was the game that, when you think about the Xbox Series X, in my opinion, this was that seller, like why you needed to get an Xbox Series X. And now the Series X is launching with no first-party, game per se, right? And I think Microsoft up until I think the third party May event where they said we're going to see gameplay was, I think, firing on all cylinders with messaging. Yeah. And I hate to say this, and Jeff, I don't know if if you're an NFL football fan, but I live in Maryland, and our team, well, depending who you talk to in Maryland, we have a winning franchise in the Ravens. We have historically was once a winning franchise in now they're called the Washington Football Team.
Yeah, Washington footballers, right?
Shout out to that person that went and bought all the teams' names up.
Yes, big shout out to you.
Yeah, what a good. Yeah, that was a move right there. I love that story.
Let me tell you something, Jeff. Coming from living in the DMV, I'm not surprised that someone went down because the patent office is in Alexandria, Virginia, not too far from where the Redskins play.
It's probably someone that has like a friend that works there or something. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. So I'm not surprised by that. But like with the Redskins, like there's always this ominous cloud around them. Like they're almost like the Bad News Bears.
Man, I don't want to. I'm a Lions fan. Don't talk to me.
No!
The Lions,
okay,
yeah, the Lions fan. The Lions were going to win the Super Bowl, and then Washington came and beat their ass. Like the one team that dominated them that year was Washington in the regular season, and then in playoffs. Of course, we had to meet them again.
Yes, yeah. I remember
that's because Eric Kramer let us down in the playoffs. Yeah. I remember that game. Me too. I live in Michigan, and I lived that Lions hate.
Yeah, I grew up at that 24 mile. Yeah, 24 miles. So,
17 Garfield.
Yeah, 24 mile in Shelby and Macomb. Yeah.
You know the area.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, man. For the first 15 years we're in that area, and then I grew up with Barry Sanders, so of course, how could I not be a Detroit Lions fan? So.
We literally wasted the career of two of the most talented players phenomenal. In NFL history, in Calvin Johnson and Barry Sanders.
Yeah, you made Megatron retire.
Yep,
literally,
and Barry Sanders.
That's why when Tom Brady came to Michigan and went to the Patriots, I went with him.
So
and 20 years later, I didn't regret it.
So maybe I should use the Lions as an example. I almost feel like this is the case with Microsoft. I hate saying this, but it's almost like it's like they have not learned the lessons of the past from their mixed messaging from 2013 to how they present things. They were firing on all cylinders,
Yeah.
And then the Bay event happens, and then we see Halo, and it's just like, oh my god, what's Jeff? What is? And again, like, I'm not upset that the delay that was the right move, but I feel like the messaging is just not. It's been it's been bad.
I mean, I think it's bad in like relative terms. I think that people had this idea that Microsoft was firing on all cylinders, and they got their shit together, and they learned from their mistakes, and they know what they're doing this time. And that I never bought that. I never was a believer of that narrative. I could always sense, and it came to me when the Xbox One S all digital edition came out, and everyone's like it's getting rumored, and everyone's talking about like, man, this thing could come out and be like $150. This thing could come out and be $99, and then it comes out and like, what was it, like $250 or whatever? It was a price that no one was going to pay for that thing. And it's like, man, they really messed this up. How could they do this? Oh, it's still Microsoft, and they're still kind of just bumbling along in doing these things. And it's like, I don't think Sony's very good at it either. I think they just have awesome games that stand and speak for themselves. I think when Sony goes out and tries to like do a state of play, it's kind of embarrassing. And I talked about earlier, it's not really their fault. But it's like Microsoft's only kind of worse because you're comparing them to Sony, and also because you think that, and you think that they aren't ever going to do a 2013 again. And when you really look at it, they are doing much better than what they were doing in 2013.
Yes,
like they're like, I mean. Yeah, Forte, you're in a store. No one's talking about like, oh, this game is like requiring online checks. Like, it's a completely different world. Like, yeah, exactly. Like, but that was like all anyone talked about, even after they turned around and cut that off. That's still what people believed for a long time because they just messed up 2013 so bad. But like what you're speaking to here is like, can Microsoft figure this out? And I think that it's actually kind of hard. It's difficult, because gamers are so demanding. They do want so much. We play our games. They come out. They're huge games. They took 5 years and $500 million to make, and we play them in a weekend, put them down, and we're like, where's the next thing? And I'm the same way. I feel the same way. I want the next thing too. But that's like, if you're making games, that's got to be pretty daunting. That's got to feel kind of rough to be like, man, we just spent years of our lives, literally millions of dollars, and it just went through your system like a bad burrito. And it's like, I put myself in their shoes, and I'm like, man, that is rough. That's a rough business to be in. And so like, you do understand, like, as Microsoft, like, there's hype that you can build up and you get people excited about things, but how do you manage it? And should you tell people to get excited and risk disappointing them? And it's like, I mean, clearly that's what happened. It's like they're like, we are trying, and we do think that some of these games that we're working on are very exciting, and we believe in what we're doing for the future. And so, like, do you feel good about the June event, Phil Spencer? Yeah, I'm feeling great. What the fuck's he supposed to say? Like, right. Yeah, right. Like, but it's like, but we take that to mean like, oh, you're gonna beat Sony, and it's like, okay, so what the answer there? And the answer is for them is never say anything. This is my job now. I have to write about these guys, and they never want to talk about a damn thing because we just we punish them for everything they say. So and again, I'm guilty of this too. I punish them all the time for saying something dumb, and I write a story about how they said something dumb. But remember, I end up in a world where no one wants to talk to me because it's like that. I'm just going to call them dumb in a few days. It's not. You know, I'm not going to tell you Microsoft's doing great. They messed up. This is bad for the Xbox Series X launch. But at the same time, I have been doing this a long time. You guys have all been gaming for a long time. It sounds like you remember past consoles, right?
Yeah.
Tell me what you remember of the first 6 months of any console. Nothing. It goes by so fast.
Yeah,
it goes by so fast, and we're not going to remember like kind of the problems if games do start coming out. I'm not, again, this sounds like, oh, I'm like trying to apologize for Microsoft. I'm just telling you the reality of a lived experience playing games, and, you know, getting the Nintendo 64 and getting Mario 64 and then having nothing for months and months and months. And then like, okay, but then the next game does come out, and it's like, you forget about all that waiting, and it's like you build up all these memories and stuff, and that's what's going to matter in the end. And Microsoft still has a chance to pull off all that stuff. Earlier I said I'm skeptical of their ability to do that, and I am, but they have the chance, they have the opportunity, and they could make us all forget about this problem leading up to the Xbox Series X if they deliver on those games. That's a big if, though.
Yeah, that's 100%, Jeff. Because I mean, you see like what happened with Sony and the PS3 stumble. By the time they got to the middle to the end of the generation and going through PS4, yeah, it's still brought up, but no one really harps on it.
Right. Yeah.
You know, so
like the 3DS is a good example too. Like 3DS had a really rough launch. People were really mad at it. Nintendo did have to cut the price, but they figured. Yeah, they figured out. Right, exactly, and they figured it out and they made it work. And then no one really remembers that stuff anymore. The only time I remember that happened is like, I'm like, why isn't Yoshi's Island on the 3DS? And it's like, oh, I'm not an ambassador, so I can't get Yoshi's Island on the 3DS.
Right. Ambassador.
Yeah.
They gave out like 30 games or something like that, right?
Yeah, something close, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think the thing for me with Halo was like how you said, name a system that when you first got it, can you remember the first 6 months? I think for most of the people that really love Halo, that game came out at a time where everybody was kind of at an age where everything kind of they knew what they wanted in the game 100%. Like when that game came out, I was literally matter of fact, I think I had just got to high school. So I was like in that mode where I knew what time meant to me. And if I decided to spend all my time playing a game, I really, truly loved it. And I think that's where the whole fan base for Halo circulates at, because it's not like Mario. Most of us, when we got Mario, we were like, this is fun. All your friends had it. They all played it. It was something that everybody did. So you was like, cool, I'm going to play Mario too. You actually made the decision to go out and buy an Xbox to play Halo because Halo was just that thing. And then going to people's houses and taking full TVs. Nothing like that ever happened in gaming up until we got to Halo. So that's why Halo, for a lot of people, is like, what is Microsoft doing? This is literally the $1 billion cash cow. We can all go down the line of everything that Halo did right, all the way from marketing. Like the Microsoft we have now versus the Microsoft we had back then when it came to the marketing side, it's like polar opposites of each other. Like very polar opposite when it came to that game. Now, a part of that has to do with the fact that Halo just isn't the IP it used to be.
Yeah, it's a very different world too, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's not the same IP.
And it's a crowded space too. I think, like,
and it's it is a very, very crowded space. You know, plus that arena type shooters don't really penetrate the market like games like Battle Royales, and Call of Duty still dominates that space. But for me, I don't think it's really going to hurt them this holiday, because the one thing about a launch system is whatever they put out in the world, whatever goes out to these stores or you buy, they're going to sell those regardless. What's going to happen in that that second quarter, that January, February, March area, after the dust has settled on all the systems that you sell in the first run, what's coming then? That's where, if they can get something like a Halo out, which I highly doubt, because the fact that they threw 2021 up there with no barometer of when it's coming, I'm like, dude, is this like next year 2021? Because the way that the game looked, it was like, I told people I didn't mind the way the game looked. It was the performance issues that they had with the game that really took me back. I was like, I said in the tweet, the biggest problem with Halo was it wasn't the looks of the game. It's just that the expectations of next generation being coddled with Halo and all of their marketing being most powerful system, take advantage of the next generation version of Halo, playing on that system. You get Game Pass for Halo. Everything was tied nicely together in a big bow to not just take advantage of just the Series X and all of the games that's coming out, but Halo was the centerpiece. And as soon as that demo hit the street, and within not even 4 hours, all the marketing and the messaging changed around it. It became about technology. We're not held to it. It's about all the other games that we have, all the services we have. Halo became a footnote and everything. The Craig memes went off and went crazy. So to me, the box is going to be fine for the holiday. That thing is going to sell out no matter what, because people are going to want systems. But what's going to be January, February, and March? What is that going to look like? And then if Halo does go all the way to next holiday, what is it like? At that point, you're in the same kind of situation again because it's a super saturated market. Who knows what's coming in 2021? Sony might have some surprises for us in 2021 when it comes to their first party IPs that they could actually get out there. So it could help them if they can get the game out early, like say spring to summer, because then they'll get another initial boost on the system sales because people are going to want to play Halo. If they can't play it on PC, they're going to go out and get a new Xbox or get something that they could play it on if they don't already have it. So it can work to their advantage if they do it right. But Halo they can't come out and show that game like they showed it before. Like the fact that you delayed it means to me that you're telling everybody that yes, this was bad, this was wrong. So now you're giving the expectation of people, just like I said about that about the State of Decay demo that they showed, the video. I saw that demo and I was like, dude, State of Decay 3 is not going to look like that. And you're giving people kind of a false sense of security on what that game's going to look like because they're going to be like, dude, that looked amazing. So now you're doing the same thing with Halo, saying that we're going to pull back the curtain and say, hey, we're going to fix the stuff wrong with Halo. I don't think you're going to get a drastically different looking Halo than what you got.
I think they are going to. They'll have time to figure stuff out. I do think it's probably going to come out like around after summer. Probably it'll probably be like right after E3. That gives them a chance to like build stuff up with E3 and be like, here's the future, and then here's another look at Halo. There are some surprises that I'm hearing they're trying to pull off to like really get like to win back the good graces of people with like this Halo mess. We'll see if they're able to pull that off. I'll try. I'm trying to report the story, so I'm sorry to tease it, but I'm working on it. But I mean, if they could do that, there is a pathway forward for them to like win people back. But again, it's not good. But I think the idea that like this is like the story is written now, it's all over. Forget about Xbox. It's all about Sony going forward. It's not that simple. Like we don't know prices yet, right? Like if prices come out and the PlayStation 5 is $600 and the discless version is like a little bit cheaper, like that, you think people are going to be talking about Halo anymore? If the system for $600, it's going to be price. That's all anyone's going to talk about, and it's like that's gonna cover up Microsoft's tracks a little bit. Jeff?
What is the price you think these are going to come out at?
I think that they're going to do everything in their power to get to $500, but it's these systems they're going to be losing money at $500, both of them. I thought the Xbox Series X was more expensive to make, but now talking to people, it sounds like the PlayStation 5 is actually more expensive and less powerful, and that's another thing. We talked about this earlier in the show, but I wouldn't just assume that games are going to run fine on PlayStation 5. I think it could have troubles just at the launch while people figure out this new technology with the smart shift. And if that does, that's another thing where it's like we're talking about price, and then we start talking about the system's not running games as well as the other system that is the same price or potentially cheaper if Microsoft tries to undercut them, which I think it'd be very difficult for Microsoft to do it because Sony's going to want to match whatever Microsoft does and vice versa. But like if we're talking about price and we're talking about a system struggling with games, soon that's actually going to be the top
price
story.
Wins overall when it comes to that.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. It's good. Yeah, and so. Yeah, like you're going to need games eventually. You absolutely will. But you're right that these systems are going to sell out at launch. And if you could sort of glide on that into the spring and start and come up with something else, if you have to spend a lot of money to like get an exclusive or to add a big game to Game Pass or something like that, or make it a big acquisition to get that acquisition's games on Game Pass, do that. Make that happen. Actually deliver on that. And then people will be like, wow, Game Pass is an even better deal than even it was at the end of this month, early next month now, whether they announced the big thing that's going to make Game Pass also even better. And then you go into E3 and you're like, hey, here's all our games. And then the next month Halo comes out. Again, this is a possibility. A lot of this depends on Microsoft's ability to execute, its ability to get back into the office in a post-COVID world, if that's such a thing, and actually like finish this game. And then even if all those chips fall into place, it's still kind of hard to make a good game. And Microsoft struggled with that here and there. So I don't know. I could see the path forward for them. Whether or not they'll pull it off, who knows?
I truly believe, like, especially with the leaks that are coming out, and I hate because especially when they're not founded, but the whole situation with
you love the leaks, Forte.
No, well, you love leaks. I just like talking. You just like talking about them. I'm just here to do it with you
because I get a lot of stuff in DMs. I'm like,
I get a lot of stuff, but I'm thinking like this makes absolutely no sense. But okay,
Jeff, do you get a lot of DMs and stuff like people dropping it's funny.
I just think the one thing with this whole new leak of Microsoft saying that they're not going to have any more Series X news until September, I kind of believe that just because especially with this whole Halo thing, and I think Microsoft really truly does not want to give that price first.
Neither of them do. No.
I think neither one wants to do it, and I literally believe Microsoft is willing to pull an Apple and and give you that price 2 weeks ahead of time. The only difference is, I think at that point, retailers are already going to know how many. They're already going to have these systems in their store.
When are you when's the latest you can imagine knowing?
Well, I have a couple bets with people for October. October is the absolute cutoff.
Forte, I'm hoping October so I can hear Slow-Mo sing the song for Bug Snacks.
Yeah, I want to see him sing this song because when we say it has to be a month before. Yeah. So if it happens like in the middle of September, we win that bet, especially if that comes out. But it's like, for me, I think Microsoft, they're losing the appeal with Halo because of everything going on there. People are saying PlayStation is going to outsell Xbox 2-1. Some people think 3-1, which is probably more accurate depending on how you look at it. But for me, they're looking at it like they could come out and just say 500 or 400 for the Series X, and that would be okay. But I think they literally want Sony to come out and say what the price is, and they literally want to undercut that price. Just like they did, because I think that's in their mind. Because we all know Microsoft can be savage as heck if they want to be.
Well, they have a history of that, by the way.
They have a very big history of being savage when they want to be. And I think that one point right there in 2013 is the one thing that killed them. Yes, the whole online only check-in and stuff, that stuff killed them too. But when Sony came through the back door and came in $100 cheaper and told people they can trade their games, that hurt them even more. So I think this is the first step in them saying that. And I'm thinking Microsoft is willing to literally wait till the 12th hour to give you a price, and they'll wait.
Real quick, Forte.
Just remember, I told y'all so.
Yeah,
B Money said it. He was like, "Dog,
he said that."
He said it.
Yeah, B
I'm with you.
B Money actually, you brought that up a couple of raps ago. You said you could see them because people are like, "Oh, we need to know these prices now." You're like, "Well, wait a minute. Like, we have examples of other devices. Like, I think you said Apple. Who else? Samsung.
Anything that any company that provides a service or product, and then electronics these days, they always wait to the last minute. You know what I mean? They hit you with that pre-order, everybody goes crazy,
right?
And then it releases, a week or two later. So
why is that though? Like they have deals with like the places where you go to buy phones, right? And
like Best Buy.
I guess it just doesn't take them that long to ship that stuff out, huh? I'm just trying to think about it. It's like, historically you would think like, retailers would have to know a month ahead of time at least, right? But I guess, my thinking here was like, maybe they don't, because maybe you don't need every retailer. Maybe you just have one retail partner and then you sell the rest on your online store, especially if you're Sony. I know Sony launched their online store, I think, with this launch in mind. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. And, you're right. But most people, when a new iPhone comes out, people do go to apple.com and that's where they buy it, right? So if Microsoft or Sony could convince people to do that, maybe they could just wait to the last minute. Man, I don't. This is insane.
Jeff, what's funny is that unprecedented times, by the way. Jeff, it's funny you mentioned they could signal like certain retailers. Forte mentioned a rumor that he heard that these consoles would be available. What was it, Forte? At GameStop and Best Buy.
Oh yeah, GameStop and Best Buy for the pre-order onlys. That's what they'll do the pre-order onlys at. They'll still do them online at I know they have the deal for the all access with Amazon and Best Buy, but what I'm hearing is Xbox is going to have exclusive pre-orders only for Best Buy and GameStop when it comes to, because the thing, if they're going to sell the system at a loss, they don't want to sell the system at a loss on a site like Amazon, because Amazon doesn't guide you to buying a whole bunch of extra stuff with the system. They want you to go to Best Buy or GameStop, because those are the places that you got to go, and they're gonna recommend stuff to you like warranties, extra controllers, games, and stuff. Because once you get into the store, now you're gonna see a wall of games, versus when you go to Amazon.com and click on a button and you say pre-order. You say, I can go get the games at a later date. I don't have to do anything else. So they kind of want to funnel you into a store, because guess what? Even though they're giving a cut of that to the retail, they're still getting that bigger cut, 30 to 40% to their pocket by you buying more stuff. And that's definitely going to benefit them if they're going to undercut in price, especially for PlayStation or Xbox when it comes to these systems.
And we saw last generation, things have changed. The world's very different, but most people did buy their consoles at GameStop for the first several years. It was the market leader for hardware sales. And I think that while that might have changed, I don't think it's drastically changed. I think most people, when they
last
think
year, it was 40, it was 36% last year. Right.
Share. So that's like a huge number of people. And I think it's going to probably go up with the launch of a new console generation, where people think like, where am I going to go get hardware? Well, I bet GameStop's going to be my best bet. So I think most people will probably still think that way.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. So, speaking of price, Jeff, you think you wrote an article. Well, you did write an article. I think it was August 5th, I think, about pricing for these consoles. And I think one of the things you said was they don't know how much these consoles are going to cost. I mean, and Forte has thrown out this number quite a bit. And I don't agree with him. He said $600. Yeah, $600. I think $600 is that's the DOA. That's a very high number. Look, I could be wrong. This could be.
They would sell every system they made, and that they sold it at $600 for the first several months.
They did. Yes, this is true. But like, and there's that rumor out there that Microsoft's gonna potentially undercut. There was somebody on Reset Era who said that Microsoft's looking to undercut Sony. It's probably gonna happen. When do you, so first of all, a two-part question. Are we going to get pricing this month?
No.
No. Jeff's shaking his head like, probably.
Who knows anymore, man?
No.
I thought so. I thought we would. I mean, because it's like, we are getting down to the wire, right? Retailers do need to know, but if they do look to smartphones, if they do look to that kind of stuff, if they look to Apple, which is like the leader in terms of like designing new ways of selling things, they don't. They really could just kind of announce it at the last minute and then begin shipping a few weeks later.
You have a blueprint, and you actually have a date now. Microsoft, in all their infinite wisdom,
that was my other part of the question.
In all their infinite wisdom, after telling people Halo was delayed, came back and doubled down and said the Xbox Series X was still coming out. And not only is it coming out, they gave you a month. I was like, what? Was that an oversight? They literally told you November.
No.
So I think now how long Microsoft probably can go with this, because they could technically go all the way to the beginning of October and still have a full month to still get that thing shipped out to people's houses.
Hey, real quick, guys, Forte or B Money, Eric Jackson, you guys see, I'm looking for the super chat. I think I missed your super chat from Glorious War. If you guys,
I'll look for it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I don't want to miss any super chats. Glorious, we're going to look for it. Sorry about that. But that was my other question, Jeff. Like, that Microsoft is basically said, look, we're launching November, and now we're hearing rumors of maybe November 5th, November 6th. I think Tom Warner basically said, he that it could be like the 6th or something. Some of that had to do with what we now know as the Xbox, the worst kept secret in the industry, the Xbox Series. We know that's coming, by the way, because the controller supports it, right?
Yep.
So Jeff, I guess we're not getting price this month from either Sony or Xbox. And do you think is Xbox going to have the reveal this month of the Xbox One, the Xbox Series S?
They were going to have it this month. And last I heard that they still had a target date of this month in mind. but things have been like changing. The Halo delay was a decision I think that they kind of made recently, and I think it was for a number of factors. I think some of it had to do with moves that Microsoft's making, giving them confidence to say we can delay this because we do have a strategy in mind of how to explain it to people. But we need to now that that's fallen in place, we can go forward and develop that strategy, and we'll talk to them later. But maybe we need a little bit more time, and so let's move it to September. Maybe that's happening. I haven't confirmed that personally, but I should hear for sure pretty soon. But yeah, like late August was the date I was hearing, and then that was going to be, here's Xbox Series S, here's like some Game Pass news, and I would imagine that would have been like, here's price, because when you bring out an Xbox Series S, you can't just say, oh, it's less powerful. You need to begin talking about value.
Yeah, exactly. It's a value proposition. Yeah,
you have to explain the value, and really you have to explain your entire strategy. You have to explain why are you even making this system? Why does it make sense? And then you could begin talking about all of your thoughts, and you have to really this is the real sales pitch time now. This is when you really have to say, we're trying to bring everyone in. Here's why the Xbox Series S even exists, and here's how much it's going to cost you if you think it might fit with the way you might be playing games. So whether that's later this month or early September or whatever, I think we're going to hear price then. I do, and but things are fluctuating. They are fluctuating. I'm hearing a lot of different things happening at Microsoft, and it's hard to know exactly what to believe because things are moving so fast. It seems like.
I will tell you this: the moment Sony comes out and says what the price of their system is, Microsoft will be they will be within 72 hours of telling you.
I would agree with that. Yeah. Real quick, I did find that super chat from Glorious War. Glorious, thank you for the file. Super chat says feels like they are too many yes men at Xbox and 343i. Do you think that's the case? Shu told Corey it wasn't good enough for God of War early gameplay demo. I think that Glorious is speaking to that the quality issue I think that Microsoft's had with a lot of their first party stuff. If you compare it to Sony and that story of Shu saying, Corey, go back to the drawing board. This is not working with God of War.
Yeah. I think that I think there's a possibility there. It's hard to know the culture. To me, it seems like the reason that Halo fell apart is because like the creative director left, and maybe to me that doesn't say anything about there being too many yes men. It sounds like maybe someone didn't feel supported and they wanted out of there, and then the game kind of fell apart because the creative central core had left. I agree with the idea that you need a strong editor to come in and say this can be better. That's working for me and my job. It does seem like it's working for Sony, even if like God of War isn't my personal jam. It's still a good game. I could tell that much. And I do think Microsoft probably needs that sort of guiding voice. If Phil was just going in and saying, yeah, good enough, maybe that is the issue. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I think the more likely case is that making games is actually just very hard, and at a certain point, getting over that final hump of pushing a game from good to great, it requires a lot of money, and it requires a lot of people and a lot of time. And maybe that is why Microsoft doesn't have anything for launch, because they're finally starting to do that. And maybe that's why they're willing to delay Halo, because they want to do that. But we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I think when it comes to that in particular, I think 3-4, it's like that old saying when you're going out and you're shopping for groceries and stuff, you don't really worry about.
Is this a Bill Parcells reference?
Oh God, yeah. Oh, Jesus, let me step away from that one. Okay, redo. So in my situation, for me, you're right. God dang, that was a
Bill Parcells reference.
That was a Bill Parcells reference. I'm leaving that one right where it was.
Want us to cook. They want us to cook the meal, but they won't let us shop for the groceries.
Exactly. Yeah. So the biggest thing for me is it just comes down to, I think, Phil, when it came to Xbox, they looked at it in the situation where we got to build up our first party. So they put a lot of energy and effort into doing that. Yep. That's basically where 100% of their attention went to. You don't think that you have to kind of still pay attention to the studios you have already, because most of them are very veteran oriented and had leadership in place for a very long time. So it's just like me. I can tell you right now, my DM doesn't really have to say anything to me.
Because you put out bangers.
Because he knows that I get people promoted. I get people I get people ready to move up in the company in his district. He knows he can come to me for pretty much anything when it comes to that stuff. So when my store is struggling, he doesn't say anything to me. He literally lets me fix it over the course of a week. One time he called me on a Tuesday, was like, what's up with your performance, bro? I say, bro, it's Tuesday. Talk to me on Friday. And by Friday, it was all straight because I got all my people together. But I think that's the thing that Microsoft didn't do. I think they just assumed that their developer that was in charge of their $1 billion franchise had it under control.
But
and they did not do any type of quality control with that developer. It sounds ridiculous. Trust me, because remember, I'm the one that said during the May event, I said Phil Spencer. There's no way that show got greenlit without Phil Spencer seeing it. That's what I said on this show. I said, you telling me that Phil Spencer didn't see this show before they put it out? And everybody can say, no, he got too many other responsibilities. I said, no, they are literally launching a new system, and these are all new developers and all new business partners they're trying to build with these other third-party and first-party developers. He definitely saw this. Now, I can see him probably not seeing a lot of stuff from 343. He probably went in there and looked around and looked at some computer monitors and liked what he saw, but he probably never glanced at the actual build of the game.
Let me interject.
But I could be wrong. You never know.
Let me interject here real quick, and we spoke about this before we went live. This is your. Here's my frustration.
Oh, please tell me. I'm waiting.
This is your. Halo is to
$1 billion franchise.
Halo is to Xbox what I would say what Mario is to Nintendo. Like, this is your crown jewel,
right?
And I said this before we went live. I said this to Jeff. I said Microsoft. I've been on the Microsoft platform almost 20 years, which is crazy. It blows my mind, right?
Yep.
Xbox Live beta tester.
You did a good job on that too. Just to
thank you. I did. Even though if you remember the original headsets for the OG Xbox broke a lot, I used to have them duct tape, but
oh shoot,
yeah, but like it. That perspective I have with Microsoft, and I mentioned this with Jeff earlier before we went live. The OG Xbox, it was like the perfect box for me. The compelling online multiplayer experiences, the first party stuff. They had Ninja Gaiden. I always bring up Ninja Gaiden because I always forget his first name, but Itagaki, who's Eric's favorite developer with Devil's Third, Itagaki basically came out and was like, yeah, the Xbox is the best platform. We could never do this Ninja Gaiden on the PlayStation 2. Basically, PlayStation 2 is crap, is what he more or less said. And you had games like Otogi, you had Panzer Dragon Orta. Remember Chronicles of Riddick, by the way? Wow, that was a great game. Great game. Exclusive.
Yeah, I wish
on the OG Xbox.
I wish Vin would have taken the resources of doing that that Fast and Furious game and actually tried to get a remaster.
You know what's crazy?
Chronicles of Riddick out.
The minimum specs for that game on PC is outrageous. It doesn't even need that the way that game looks.
But you know what, Enrique? But all those games you just named, who owns those games?
Okay, but look, my point
but for real, who owns them?
Well, not Microsoft, but the
not
point
Microsoft, but that's the thing.
Think about what's going. Here's my point.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
They were aggressively going for content, and
they were.
And like Jeff said earlier, like if they drop content, all this stuff's going to be forgotten because at the end of the day, gamers care about content, right? I think we all would agree with that.
Yes,
content is king. I always tell people that content is always going to be king. My 30 years of gaming, content is king. If you deliver content, gamers have short memory. Like we're going to remember that time that we fired up. Whatever, Fable, the next Fable is, and that game delivers, right? But this showing, like they just, you
just got to remember they're going in such a different direction from what you remember them going in.
It's not just that though. It's like some of the stuff is just bad luck too, because like
very
yeah.
bad luck.
But they're like the Lions, though, Jeff. I feel like they're like.
No, I know. Okay, I get it, but
the
like,
Lions
but
literally
like,
lost all their games last season.
The
And
Lions never had a Halo,
one.
man. The Lions never had.
That's true. The Lions
they had Barry Sanders. It's kind of like Halo.
No, they had Barry, but Halo was like a championship win.
Scott
Man.
Mitchell when they had Barry Sanders and
Eric
Kramer and Rodney Peete.
Right. Yeah. God. Yeah.
Andre Ware.
But making games is really hard, and people talk about we're talking about like Halo looks like crap or whatever, and and the creative director left, and maybe he just left because the game was looking bad. Like, man, let me tell you something about making games. Every game looks like crap up until like the last 6 weeks. It's like really comes down to the very end. And like, I know you see these great gameplay vertical slices at E3 and you're like, man, that's really great. That stuff is always held together with duct tape and spit. It's never real. And yeah, Microsoft could do a bullshot and lie to us and then try to like live up to those expectations. That comes with its own risks. But making games is hard. And then the game, was having difficulties in development, but a lot of games do, and a lot of games pull through, and this game might have been able to pull through as well if you're not in a world where COVID-19 actually makes development kind of difficult.
Yeah. COVID really was like the tipping point for this game.
Yeah, it seems like the thing that really, I mean, there were other difficulties, absolutely, but again, this happens on every game, so it's just like this feels like they just kind of, this game should have come together this year. I think they were really confident of that last year. I think that's why they say it's going to launch with the Xbox Series X. And then the reasons it doesn't, it feels like it's just kind of an unfair world sometimes. And I think that there's a good chance when this game does launch, Halo fans are going to be very happy. I think making the online multiplayer free to play is really smart because you get a chance to get more people into Halo and get more people into the idea of like, man, this is a cool game that I can play with my friends whenever we want because I know everyone has it because it's free. That's smart, and that they could really make this work. But it's I get why you're disappointed. I get why they've lost you. I think they have lost a lot of people. But yeah, it's just kind of sometimes that's just the way it breaks. Yeah,
and that's not to say, Jeff, that I wouldn't go back. I mean, it's just like to me, it's when I went to PC, and PC is just a different beast, right? It's just there's more flexibility on PC, and then there's
all the good ideas come from PC. That's why that's why I play on PC because like if there's like Fortnite took over the world. Like, that's that kind of idea. That gaming idea started on PC. Before that, Minecraft took over the world. That started on PC. It's the experimentation platform. It is where the next great idea is always going to happen in gaming. So
well said. Yeah,
that it's really fun to be on the forefront of that and like get into early access stuff and mess around and be like, oh man, I stumbled on what is clearly going to be the next big thing. It's really cool.
All I remember is in 2007 when Halo 3 came out, probably a lot of people's favorite Halo game of all time.
Halo Reach.
Halo Reach is my favorite one.
That's my favorite
because I love the book and just to go back and do that story. But when it comes to like the full package, I think Halo 3 is the one that spoke to more people. But I remember in that Vidoc that they did like a couple of years after the game came out, they literally were sitting there at a computer the day before certification, praying that a disc actually burned to a DVD. And when that DVD popped out, they wrote Halo 3 on top of it. They finally could go with the certification. All the way up to the day before certification. They literally went to the day before and they didn't even know if the game was going to burn on a disc. That's how crazy that is.
That's games, man, and that is games. Like I think Corey Barlog talking about like God of War talked about how that game came together very late. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of luck a lot of times. And it's really just, believing in the game you're making and actually seeing it through. And I think that it was probably very hard for 343 Industries to feel that way in a world where they couldn't be in an office with their development teammates and where their, creative director wasn't there anymore. So,
yeah. And and before I let you go, I think it's also a couple of things, the mandates that were kind of put on them. And you all know how I feel about 343, because I feel like ever since Bungie, it's real hard to take over. It's just like a great quarterback. I feel for the quarterback that's going to take over for Tom Brady. It's going to be terrible. It's going to be horrible. But I also feel
he's going to be the MVP, man. Come on.
Yeah, I'm still rooting for my Patriots. I'm still rooting Stidham all day. I mean, it might be Cam Newton. You never know. But for me, I feel like 343, as much as I don't really have that much belief in them as a developer when it comes to Halo, they're still very talented. And the thing that everybody hates about Halo Infinite, they've shown that they can give you a great looking game before. They may not know how to put a story together sometimes and make it all disconjointed and not promote it right, but they know how to make a good looking game. So I don't have a problem, and I think they will fix that issue of it. But I also think some of the mandates, people don't think about what Microsoft kind of did to them along the lines of this development, coming out and saying that the system's going to be 60 frames per second. Well, they already plan on doing an open world game. So how much harder is it to make an open world game 60 frames per second? It's got to run on an old console. And then you're saying multiplayer is 120 frames per second. So a lot of the decisions that is being made for Halo is not really creator driven. It's driven by the performance of what the box is going to be. So a lot of the decisions that 343 probably wanted to make for the game to do other things kind of got put to the side because Microsoft wants a game that's going to perform well but not just look great. And a lot of that stuff got downsized probably because of the limitations of going on an older system. And this is probably the first time, Brad, you can actually toot that horn where you say game is held back because of old consoles. Because if they literally let this thing breathe on the new system, they probably wouldn't have as many problems as they're having. Maybe but I think all of the different mandates that Microsoft put on them, we wanted to be open world. We wanted to be 60 frames per second. We want all these different things to be in the game. And who knows? 343 probably wanted those things too. But you got to let the creators create, because that's what people remember the most about the game. Not that it's at 60 frames per second and 30 and what's that? Because remember, Halo ran at 30 frames and it was one of the best running 30 frame games you ever played when Bungie had it.
Forte, I'm on PC. I want 60 frames at least. So go ahead.
I'm at 100. I'm 144 plus, sir. So I understand.
Yeah, I think 60 frames is the minimum. Go ahead, Jeff.
I think it's a meme that's being held back by Xbox One. I think you were onto something there, though. I think it's being held back because they want to make the online multiplayer free to play, and that means they want it to run on PC and they want it to run on a lot of PCs.
Yep.
I think that's and really that's not driven by like Microsoft demanding it. That's the market. That's like
the market. You're right. That's the market.
Look at Valorant. Like Valorant looks like garbage too, and like no one cares because they want to play the game. And
you also that's PC though. You know how PC feel. That's the one thing.
Well, no, I know, but that's the market though. Like if you have an online shooter, you can't not be on PC. You cannot launch, like PlayStation's not going to have an online shooter anymore. That's not going to be also on PC. If they do, that's pretty. It's just sort of like. I mean, I wouldn't know why they would do that anymore. That would be pretty wild.
Even have an online shooter.
So
I don't think they would. I mean, I don't think they're going to waste their time doing it. And if they do, it would also be on PC, and therefore it would have to run on a lot of PCs, and it would also probably have to be free to play. I think you can't. We're just not in a world anymore where you can try to compete with Fortnite and all that other stuff within a premium console exclusive shooter. That's just not going to work. No one's going to play that stuff.
That's a great point, Jeff. Jeff, actually, real quick, I do have a giveaway to give. And so somebody actually requested that we do
Buck Snacks.
What?
You giving away Buck Snacks?
No, we're not giving away Buck Snacks.
Okay.
But we're doing a I have an Xbox I have an Xbox digital gift card for $25 we're going to give away. But so the last 2 weeks we've been doing giveaways, and Wraith the Emperor has been winning. And so I want to be fair. I want to give it to someone else in live chat. So I want to do a trivia question.
Can I answer?
Problem is I'm terrible with trivia questions, as the Brad panel knows. I think we did one trivia question. It was like a freebie basically, because it really wasn't a hard question. So Forte, any ideas, guys, for trivia questions?
Have to be gaming related.
Yeah, it has to be game related.
Oh,
definitely.
Lord.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see here. I can't even think of anything. It's not good.
I'm terrible at this sort of thing too. I'm trying to think.
Somebody said who won Super Bowl II? No, we can't do that. That's not true.
Who was the first? Who was the first guest ever on Brat Podcast?
I don't remember that. That's so long ago. Go ahead.
I would pick something you don't remember who your first guest was. It must.
You mean like first industry guest?
Yeah, first industry guest.
I think that was. Oh, who was that?
Oh Lord!
I don't want to say it out loud.
This would have been a good trivia question for you.
It's between a developer and a journalist. So I'll leave it at that. But E, what were you gonna say, man?
I was saying maybe it should be like Halo related in honor of the Halo delay.
Go ahead, E. You got a Halo trivia question?
I think I might have one.
Why does 7 mean so much to Halo? I mean to Bungie.
What's that?
Why does 7 mean so much to why is the number 7 so prominent in Bungie?
Well, that's a good question.
I actually know the answer to it too.
All right, so that's the question. Why is the number 7 important to Bungie? If you get that answer right, you will get this $25 gift card. So actually, Forte, would you mind?
Probably never going to answer the question either.
Well, we have Google, Forte.
We get to the Google machines.
Oh, I don't know if it's on Google.
All right, Forte, can you watch a live chat? Make sure somebody.
I'm looking at it.
All right, awesome. All right, let's see here. So, Jeff, I do have one more question though.
Oh, Dark got it.
Who got it?
Dark got it. Because there are 7 holders of chairs, so they have 7 chairmen. That's why the number 7 is so important to Bungie, because they always have 7 members on the chair of the board of governors.
Oh, okay. All right, Dark. Well, congratulations for winning that $25 Xbox gift card. Dark,
I'm shocked.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. Dark, hit me up on the Twitter DMs, and I will drop the code in the DM and Twitter. Just make sure you hit me up, _podcast. And I'll get that over to you. But so, Jeff, we talked about pricing of these consoles. We don't know what's going to happen. It's 2020, right? But in terms of events, so I've heard things that, Microsoft was supposed to have an event this month. Maybe that doesn't happen. Sony apparently is supposed to have an event this month, maybe towards the latter part of the month, where their rumor is they're supposed to announce. Well, I've heard a couple things. They're supposed to do a deep dive or tear down the PlayStation 5 hardware, but they apparently are also supposed to announce 2 other, I guess, big exclusive games to the PlayStation 5. Have you heard anything in that regard as it relates to Sony in an August event and the teardown and these 2 games?
I've heard a lot of rumors about games that they're trying to get, exclusive and deals that they're working on. And I think that is, I think that's possible. I feel like, I don't know if, I guess they could come out and do that now. I guess you would do that if the price is high. I think if you were coming out and saying that the PlayStation 5 is $600, you need those other games to make people forget about that. So that would I would be worried if I were trying to buy a PS5 this year, if they were coming out and saying oh, we do have GTA 6 coming exclusive. Cause I think that they're going to do that to cover up the price. But if they're making those deals, I would think they would hold them until after launch, because they're going to sell every PlayStation 5 that they make for a long time. So why would you fire those pistols when you don't need to? You would save them for E3 probably, or sometime next year, or a big state of play. But maybe as for the hardware teardown, I don't think they would do that as an event. That seems like a recipe for disaster. That seems like you get people hyped up, and if you don't have the games, and it's you're talking about price, and you're talking about here's the USB ports, people just get mad that it wasn't something bigger. So I would I don't think it would be an event. I think there's a chance that they're going to start releasing more information as YouTube videos and stuff like that. Might be something along those lines. Probably a lot of blog posts coming up pretty soon. But yeah, we'll see. I have not heard anything specific on a Sony event coming up like that. Microsoft, yes. Sony, no. And Sony's probably going to wait as long as they can. Probably going to wait for Microsoft to go first if they possibly can before announcing price. And so maybe they're just holding off on that, and then they'll decide their strategy.
Yeah.
Who do you think is more important to get the price out first?
God, I don't know. I think that's the whole problem. Is like I think both of them
who
think
does it matter to most.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to settle on Microsoft, right? I think it has to be Microsoft. It's more important that they get to go last. So, but I don't know if they like going first. I don't know if either of them like. There's no reason to go first, right? You want to go last. I guess maybe you want to go first if you know the other guy's going to match, but no one's confident of that. And at the same time, even if you're confident that they're going to match, you want to make sure that you're not like going too low because they actually don't want to lose a lot of money on hardware. So it's like you go 500, but the other guy was willing to go 600. You could have gone 600 too. It's tough. So I think this is why they don't know the price, because they can change it up to the last minute, and they don't know what to set these things at because the other guy's just not making a move. So
yeah,
I'm confused. I bet they're feeling even more confused about what to do.
Yeah, go ahead, B.
No, I'm saying I love it, man.
I do. I love
You love it.
I hold on to the very last minute, man. Announce the price the day before. I don't care.
The day before,
you trying to put people in the grave.
We've been knowing that next gen consoles was coming.
Hey, I got my money already saved for both systems. So
if you aren't somewhat prepared, that's your fault. That's not my fault.
Especially with all this money the government gave you over the last 5 months.
Whenever they announce a date and a price, I'll be ready. That's all that matters to me. I don't care about anybody.
Me money on his bag, he on his square. He's like, I can let this thing go to the end of the year. All I care.
Hey Jeff, don't you think though if COVID never happened here, right, and we had E3, that we would have had these prices already?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, probably. I mean, not necessarily, but I think it's much more likely. They still would have had a lot of the same reasons not to share the price. It is still the one thing you can change, but things got so much more complicated with COVID, and so much more is out of their hands that are cost-causing things like shipping and packaging.
Yep.
Like just like getting packaging from China, it like you just don't know if you could rely on that. You've got to like really lock that stuff down, and you're probably going to pay a premium for that. And it's like, man, all this stuff's getting taken out of their hands. The only thing they can hold on to is price. And they definitely have to do that now, but they probably actually would have done it anyhow, even if the world was sane. Just because I think going forward, most companies know that's going to be like their one option. I think we saw this in video cards. AMD and Nvidia recently fought back and forth before COVID on the price of like recent video cards, like where AMD announced the price, Nvidia announced the price that was going to be kind of the same, and then AMD is like, no, wait, we're going to go even cheaper. Actually, we're cutting our prices right away, and it was this like big move, and everyone's like, oh man, AMD played them so well, and I think it sounds like they really did. And I think Microsoft and Sony are wary of this, and also both trying to do the same thing, where they're playing the other one. And
can they actually do that though? They can do anything they want. But if Sony comes out and says 500, Microsoft says 4, is Sony gonna come back? Nah, man, we coming in at 4.
I don't know if Sony. I don't know if they can do that. That would be. I think in gaming that's a little bit more. I mean, like in console gaming, we're very much attuned to like appearing weak. And I think that Sony would appear weak if they did that. And people are like, man, why do you seem scared? And
Sony shook.
People need to shut up about that, because you want Sony to do that and you want them to drop their price. Right. Come on, let them fight, guys. Everyone just shut your mouth. Let them fight.
I kind of want to see. This is what I want to see. I want the Xbox to do. I want to see Xbox undercut, because I feel like
I want to save money.
I want to save money, but I also want to see Microsoft do something that I know they want to do and see how Sony reacts to it. Yeah, but I also want to see Sony stand on that square and say, we don't care if your system's $400. We go do what you couldn't do last generation, sell a weaker system, more money, and still outsell you. That's what I want to. That's what I want to see happen. Because
that would be a lot of fun,
dude. That would be Listen, it's all in fun and games, but to me, I want to see Microsoft do that, and then Sony says, we're going to do what you couldn't do last generation.
Oh, my goodness.
That's going to be funny if that happened, man.
Go ahead, B.
Now, I was going to ask Jeff, do you think Sony or Microsoft would have to approach, these big third-party partners like Activision and EA to get, like big games in their day and date before people really adopt these Game Pass services or PlayStation Now, to where like you say like for the next 3 years Madden is releasing day and date, or like Call of Duty is releasing day and date for the next 3 years.
I think that if I'm Phil Spencer and I got a big checkbook and I still have Satya Nadella at my back saying, no man, it's okay, spend some money, try to make some moves here, and I just had to delay Halo and I need to do something to get people feeling good about buying an Xbox this holiday. I think one of the things you could do, I think one of the things on the table, it should be on the table, is go out and try to get NBA 2K on Game Pass day and date. I think that'd be a really good move. There. I think that would be huge. I think it's like the ideal game, right? I think that's the kind of game where it's like it speaks to an audience that loves playing consoles. They buy that game every year. If you just tell them straight up, hey, next 3 years, every one of these is coming out day and date on Game Pass. Come join us. Come hang out here. There's no reason it's going to have crossplay. There's no reason not to come here. You're still going to be able to play with your friends. Boy, that sounds like the exact right move. It would probably take a lot of money, but you just delayed Halo. What are you doing? Are you actually in this to win it? Like you spent so much money acquiring all these studios. You spent a lot of money. It sounds like you're planning to do that even more. Why are you spending all this money if you're just going to go futz it up here at the beginning of the console generation? Go spend some more money. You are pot committed. You have to win this pot. It doesn't matter if you save a few shekels on the side now. Right. Spend that money, make the moves, point. Make it happen. And so I think they're going to make stuff happen. I would be surprised if they go out and get NBA 2K as a Game Pass a day and date launch. It wouldn't be exclusive. It would still come on PlayStation, right. But day and date.
Are you getting Halo? Are you getting the Series X day one, B Money?
No, man, I got a PC.
Okay, let me ask you a question. If that was to happen, Xbox gets 2K in Game Pass day one, but it's only on the Xbox version, not on the PC Game Pass. Are you going to do it then?
Well, I still have an X, so I'll still play 2K.
Well, I know, but you know you want the nice and shiny though.
But I buy 2K everywhere, so it wouldn't matter to me.
That's true. Yeah. Well, B Money's a bad. He's bad. He's gonna spend that money regardless.
Yeah, exactly. Well, look, I just want to put a bow on this podcast and just say, Jeff, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Great conversations. Really appreciate you coming on and just shooting the shit with us and talking video games. Please let everyone know where they can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a really good time. It's still fun to talk about games after all these years. It turns out I'm on Twitter at Jeff Grubb. Same as it's written here on the screen. Just without the space. You can also I have a couple podcasts. How Games Make Money is the show where I talk to people about how games make money. You can find that wherever you listen to podcasts, or it's also on YouTube. YouTube.com/Jeffrey Grubb is my account. And then my other show is GamesBeat Decides, a weekly show I do with my coworker, Mike Minotti. It's called GamesBeat Decides. Search for that wherever you get podcasts, also on YouTube. But yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. This was a blast.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, man. We definitely got to get you back on once the consoles release their price points.
Yeah,
we got to get you back on. It would be great, just kind of talking about that and how they arrived to those price points. So, but I also want to give a big shout out to everyone in the live chat. Thank you, everyone, for coming by and hanging out with us tonight. Really appreciate all of you. And please hit that like button. And if you're new to the show, subscribe, hit the bell notification so that you know when we go live. And also want to give a big shout out to the panel. B Money 101 B. Let everyone know they can find you as well.
Yeah, man, you can find me everywhere. Same name, B Money 101. Appreciate everybody who came through the chat. It was nice to have Jeff Grubb here. A big fan of his work. So appreciate him coming through. But everybody have a great night. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, B.
And Eric Jackson. Let everyone and Chris Redfield know where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me when I'm not here. You can find me on Gaming Perspective Saturday nights at 8:00. And other than that, you can find me on Twitter, EC Jackson with an X.
Awesome, man. And Gaming Forte, I just want to say something, man. I miss Slow-Mo, man. I miss your brother.
I know, I miss him too.
Yeah,
I just seen him yesterday, though.
You guys had a great show last time, by the way. Seriously, great show.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let everyone know they can find you, Forte.
Nah, man, it's always a pleasure. Shout out to you, Jeff. I think it was a couple weeks ago. We was on Crossfire with each other. Yep. So it was always, and I didn't know you was like that close of a neighbor. So hello, Michigander. But I'm
in Colorado now, but yeah, that's where I grew up.
Well, your roots are always here, sir.
So Jeff, are you a Broncos fan now, or
no? It's still Lions fan. I'm committed
you actually
now.
took that love with you?
Yeah, man, I don't know what I'm doing. I make mistakes and I stick to them, man. That's what I do.
I always the one thing I would say, I will always support the Lions, but I can't. No, not after last year. I can't. They literally were in every game last year with backup quarterbacks. It could have went 14-1 with backup quarterbacks and found ways to lose every game for some reason. I don't get it. But
they can't even get COVID tests right. They what's his face? Stafford tested false positive.
Yeah, exactly. I just don't get it. But it's gaming forte everywhere, YouTube and Twitter. Shout out to you, man. I feel like I got enough words in an hour because I missed the first one, so I made up time. So just wanted to make sure that was a thing. Yeah, check us out over there. I'm gonna get B Money. B Money, we got to work something out to get you into a conversation with me and Slow-Mo when that 2K come out, because we're gonna be talking a bunch of fire about that game when it comes out, and I know you're gonna have a lot to say. So
you already know.
I'm already booking you for that one.
I'll be there, man.
Hey, B Money, NBA Live's better. Just throw it out there.
Oh God,
out of here.
No, but great show, guys. It's been amazing, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah, get sneaky with the NBA Live. That's what I'm hearing. They're gonna try to make it happen.
Are they really?
Are they?
2K did
2 years off.
2K did some mess with the NBA and was like kind of screwed him over a little bit. And Andrew Wilson's pissed. And he's like, "We're gonna get serious about NBA Live." So that's what I heard.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
In 2021,
they did cut.
I mean, they have plans, but I mean, who knows when it'll happen? I think it'll probably be 2022. But they're going to try to do what NFL 2K did originally. They're going to.
How about they give us an NCAA football before they bring us a freaking NBA Live back?
They're afraid to do that, man. I don't blame them.
That's what they should be bringing.
Issues, right?
Yeah, they don't want to pay all those players.
They're afraid to pay. Yeah, man. They're afraid.
Wasn't that the Ed O'Bannon thing? Is that what it was? Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Pay those players, man.
I do think on a totally different subject, I do think the NCAA needs to play players because they're raking in billions of dollars. Like, really? I mean, come on. You guys are not a nonprofit. I'm sorry. Really? You got TV contracts. You're making billions of dollars. You're making money off the likeness of players, and you get mad when boosters give them money because they can't eat. So that's a whole nother conversation. Maybe I'll do a sports brat podcast about that. But anyhow,
you do that.
Yeah, we should do that. But Jeff, seriously, thank you so much. Loved having you on. We got to get you back on again when these consoles announce their prices. And everyone in the live chat, please have a safe rest of the week. Enjoy your time gaming, and we will see you next Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Although I might actually, you know what? No, I'm sorry. I'm actually I'm going to do a Brap rant this Saturday with Lord Cognito of the Iron Lords podcast. I don't have a time just yet. It's probably going to take place sometime in the afternoon, or maybe late afternoon.
About
well, you'll have to tune in to find out.
Oh. I'll be at work, so I'll be listening.
Tuned in Forte, yeah.
One ear pad in.
Yep. So definitely check that out. I'll drop a link for the Brap rant with Lord Cognito of the Iron Lords podcast. Salute to the Iron Lords, by the way. And everyone, again, have a great week. Enjoy your time gaming, and we'll see you shortly on Saturday. Take care and peace.